everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We've got the usual crew here today. My name is Brian Vitale. With me, I've got James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Josh Torres.
Hi, hello.
Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
And Adam Vitale.
Hello.
All right, I was trying to keep you guys on your toes by changing the order. Just so you guys know, you guys all did well.
I actually did notice, like, why did you change up the order?
Chow doesn't always deserve to be last. He's the funny guy. He should be second some of these days.
He's a designated funny guy now, according to a review.
No, putting me on the spot.
I believe in you, Chow. All right, so yeah, it's middle of November, and we've got a couple of releases for this week. We've actually got more than a couple, but two major ones that we're going to be focusing on this podcast. And then there's a couple more releases coming out next week, not least of which Pokemon, and then a few others. So yeah, it is that time of the year where we all have way too much on our plates. We're going to do our best to kind of sift through it as efficiently as we can, and to make sure at least all of the major headlines and heavy hitters at least get one look in on the podcast and try to make sure that we don't let anything fall through the cracks. So for this week, just to put it out at the start, our main two games that we're going to be focusing on are Harvestella and, of course, Tactics Ogre Reborn. So James and Josh have been playing these two games, and they are going to be the headlines for this week. And obviously, major games that are clearly in our purview, both being published by Square Enix, of course. Different styles of games. We've got like kind of the new IP, farming sim RPG hybrid, and then, of course, a remaster of a very, a very popular game from back in the day that a lot of us have a lot of nostalgia for. So we're going to start out here with Harvestella. And I believe as of this moment, while several people have expressed interest in playing Harvestella, James is the one that has had time to dig into this to some extent. So we're going to start off there, and I'll just go ahead and hand this off over to James and just say, hey, James, I don't know if you were the one that has been planning to cover this for the site or if you were just more grabbing this out of your own interest, but like, what are your thoughts on Harvestella? Have you played games like this before? And just kind of your general impressions of the game so far.
Well, that's like several questions at once.
I'm sorry. I'm giving you options. You can take it whichever route that you want.
First off, I'm not the one necessarily covering the game for the site. That's Colin. Just they sent us late code, and from what I can tell, like from impressions of people that have finished Harvestella, it's a very long game. So
also worth mentioning that there was no early review code for this game. So no one got it.
And you just mean like, no one. Apparently, like the day it released, there were no reviews anywhere.
Yeah, nope. It's like I have a friend who recently finished it, and his final play count was like almost 80 hours, and that was like at some few hours like doing side activities and stuff. Like he really went like hard on the fishing in the game, but in general, it is like to give a ballpark. Like you're looking at least over 50 hours.
And then there's like a post game too, apparently.
Yeah. So. What do you think so far? You're about like the first 3 to 4 hours in, right?
So I finished the first dungeon, so I have an idea of what the overall gameplay loop is like.
Okay.
This game, maybe the marketing was a little bit misleading.
Yeah,
the one thing they kept saying.
Go for it. My bad.
They sold this game like Rune Factory in the sense that it's primarily a Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons game. And then the JRPG is like the seasoning that makes it a bit more interesting. It's the other way around. It's just an action RPG, JRPG, and the farming stuff is basically...
from what I hear.
It's kind of like how Atelier Ryza is much more of a JRPG first than an Atelier game.
It's like the farming. I was thinking it's like Nier.
Yeah, the farming seems to be a means to an end. Like you're primarily like farming because like that's like your primary means of like income, for example, and you use that income to supplement your travels, as you're venturing into like whatever dungeons there are. So like it's not like I guess as much of a daily life focus as something like Rune Factory and Harvest Moon, from what I understand.
Yeah. So if you like farming games and you like RPGs, as long as you come in with the right like mindset, you'll probably have a great time with this because as a JRPG, it's a bit of a slower paced start, and I feel like a lot of the early like Steam reviews, if you look at them, a lot of them kind of fell like, I don't want to say victim to, well, I guess yeah, kind of fell victim to it because the game has a lot of exposition at the start and it really tries to kind of handhold you a little bit in like the first hour. But then once you really get going and you're exploring the first dungeon, then especially once you finish the first dungeon, the game really starts to open up, and it's kind of impressive. Just despite the game obviously being very budget, I feel like out of all of the more budget games that Square Enix has published in the last like month and a half, this one kind of makes the most of that budget because it looks like incredible from an art style standpoint. The like both like the 3D visuals and like even like the portraits just look really beautiful. And the story is off to a good start. Like, and I've heard that it gets really interesting eventually, like later on. And the soundtrack, I'm just gonna say this right now. This game's soundtrack is like a front runner. Like, this is like probably top 3 soundtracks this year. It just goes incredibly hard.
Well, that's pretty high praise. Like I saw like obviously the 2D art. I forget who the artist is, but it was something that was still very apparent in the marketing as being a strength of the game. I kind of agree that a lot of Square Enix's releases in the last couple of weeks have had to like target a more artistic or more unique, visual presentation. Like I'm thinking of Field in this sense, where we kind of talked about how that game had a really, really clean art style, really something kind of unique and different. And Harvestella, I can sort of see that being the same way. But I'm interested now in looking up who the composer is. 'Cause I don't know offhand.
On this.
Goshino.
Yeah, Goshino was on Harvestella, so yeah, guaranteed bangers left and right for sure.
I believe it might have been Cullens as he's also going through the game. When you talk about how this game is more of an RPG first with the life sim farming elements is more window dressing, how the first or second like boss encounter of this game reminded him of like a Final Fantasy XIV raid. I assume more in style than in function, but basically that it goes really hard really quickly in terms of scope and story. I don't know if you've gotten that far yet, James.
Yeah, I haven't gotten quite that far, but everything I've heard from people that I kind of trust about this sort of stuff, it's like it's definitely not going to be for everyone necessarily, but if you're in that camp of you like games like Harvest Moon, Story of Seasons, specifically Rune Factory, I'd say, and you love like action RPGs and you want something that's like a good mix between a Rune Factory and but with just a little bit more RPG to it. It's like this is I've been really surprised at how much I've been enjoying this so far, and it seems like it doesn't hit everyone quite the same, but a certain portion of people that have been playing it, it's just probably like on their game of the year lists, and like even early on, I can kind of feel that yeah, no, this is going to be something special by the time I'm done with it.
Yeah,
I have a question for you, James. Do you know if you can actually get married in this game? That's the secret.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So the way it works is that you have side quests for a bunch of different NPCs to and then you can like level up your level with them. And anyone that you've maxed out your level with, you can choose to marry in the post game. And it's something that you directly have to choose when you want to marry someone, apparently. So it's not like automatic. So you can just like max out everyone that you want and then just be like, okay, well, I want to marry you.
Yeah, so the from what my friend was saying, since he got through all that stuff, is so as you're getting to know like your companions that have like these like pips, kind of like S-Link ranks almost, and like once you max those out, you can craft these items called promise rings. You can craft multiple of them, but you can only give one person a promise ring, and that's it for that playthrough. And then in the post game, like you live with that person as you're going through content after like the main story's over. So there is a romance mechanic that people have been wondering ever since it was unveiled, and they were kind of like tightly lipped on like whether it would have or have not. But yes, there is a sort of partnership system in
it's
this
also
game.
It's also worth noting that you can choose your pronouns for the main character
Mhm.
and then choose the body type separately.
And then there's no like restrictions on like if say you go male, female, or non-binary, you can still, pick
Marry
any
whoever,
partner you
yeah.
want. Yeah, whoever, same sex, different sex, it doesn't matter. So that's cool. Just lifting the barriers. Then there's no barriers. Go who you want, be who you want to be, and that's neat of them to do that.
And it's also
It
neat
is.
because there's like some NPCs where if you're paying attention, you'll notice that there are like non-binary NPCs, and the game doesn't make a big deal about it; just treats it as normal. Which, but
That's how it should be.
that's what you want.
Yeah, and we saw that like in Xenoblade 3. So it's neat that it doesn't have to be like a listed feature anymore. It just is. It's just the way
Yeah.
people are. But it is interesting to hear James talk about how this game was marketed like more like a straight line Rune Factory, and it's kind of like James is saying, it's not like Rune Factory, but if you do like Rune Factory but wish it more seesawed towards the RPG end rather than the life sim end, then this game kind of occupies a space that not a lot of games do, where it seems like the games like Rune Factory, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they have those elements, but they're very much on the back burner, where the life sim stuff takes center stage, where this game presented itself that way, but it seems like it's not quite that way.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I don't know if you're this far in yet, but like one of the big marketing things for Harvestella was like there's like this season in between the normal seasons, like called the quietest, where like just like take out all your crops, take out all this and that. And I'm just wondering, like I don't know if you know, but
I haven't
like
really
how
gone that far yet.
okay, because like there seems to be like a almost like a reset mechanic inherently and narratively in the game, and I'm wondering like if that dampens enjoyment, or like it's okay to start over with like your farm and so forth. So the obviously I'm very interested now that I've heard like more people get their hands on this game. Like I was talking to my friend about it, and he's been playing through. Me and have been going through like all these niche Square Enix releases. Tim more so than me, but like like if we were to rank it, like going from like titles he least enjoyed to most enjoyed, it'd be like Valkyrie, Elysium, Star Ocean, then Harvestella, then Dio Field.
Wait, what order was that?
From
It's
least
sad that
enjoyed to most enjoyed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's sad that you gave me the order, and I'm like, I can't tell from that order if that was most to least or least to most, because a lot of these games, I've not finished Star Ocean yet, but the other ones that you've listed, like Dio Field, I'm like, a lot of them kind of occupy the same space, where I think they have like specific strengths, but I don't know, man, ranking these games is going to be tough.
Yeah. That's why I specifically like mentioned like going from least enjoyed to most enjoyed before ranking them, because I know they do. You make a good point that like each of these releases are pretty distinct and unique from one another, and they excel in different ways while having like different weaknesses to them. And they're definitely like they all share that common bond of like they're not a game for everyone, but for the audience that they do cater to, they like strike a pretty strong resonance with them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but that reminds me, like when we talked about Dio Field on the podcast, we were mostly positive on it, but now I'm looking at the Steam page and it's all reviews mixed, recent reviews mostly negative. And I'm just kind of like,
for like a hot minute, it was like mostly negative, and like you don't know what the fuck's happening, but like it's just like it kind of hurts a little. I'm like, man, I really like Dio Field, but
yeah, I'm like, oh,
did
did I miss something? Is my taste bad? Do I have bad opinions? Oh no,
That's it.
I don't
Yes,
know. You just have bad opinions.
relatable.
Yeah,
Really.
so a lot of these times I have to kind of revisit, like, and either boot the game back up or just recontextualize it with other people, as we will likely get the chance to at the end of the year, to say how much did I really enjoy this game. I don't know, and we'll have the same when we go and talk about Star Ocean: The Divine Force and other games that have come out in that same sphere recently.
It's an incredibly hectic, like just busy season. Like all these RPGs coming out, like from October to November, like is kind of brutal for us, because it's time for like end of the year stuff. There's like kind of like the crunch time that like all of us kind of face of like, okay, what do I want to get to maybe represent on that game of the year stuff, and now just like releases left and right, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And there's on top of like any other assignments that we have assigned to like maybe releases like on the back half of the month or early December, and so forth. So it's just a lot. It feels overwhelming and kind of feels like drowning at some point. But
Thanks, Square Enix.
and
Yeah,
also
it's the
I
crazy
don't,
thing
I don't
is-
want to single out any specific company, but if I was going to, it would be Square Enix right now.
and Square Enix has been kind of on a release spree for better or for worse, kind of competing with themselves at a certain extent. It also doesn't help that there's from our side behind the scenes, but like for a good chunk of these, like we've been getting like late code as well. So just like for RPGs, that's kind of almost a death sentence when it comes to like kind of getting it out at a timely manner too, because we want to make sure we take our time and produce something good and something like helpful for our audience.
Well, the worst thing, like the thing I desperately want to avoid is I know I personally can't get to everything. For instance, I wanted to get to Soul Hackers before the end of the year. It just won't happen. We'll have to rely on people like Josh and Adam who did play it to carry their opinion on that game and represent the site. But like, I want to make sure that we don't get to the end of the year stuff and we have a game that we're like, oh, I guess no one got around to that. No one got to Pokemon. We're not going to discuss it. I want to make sure that everything at least gets a genuine look in. But yeah, we have games like Pokemon coming out next week, and someone's got to get to that and hopefully get form an opinion on it within a few weeks.
Yeah, we had the fucking Submission First remake coming out at the last day of the month,
Yeah.
and that's technically eligible if it was
Quentin,
good.
You get to carry this one, and it's all on you. And then, not only that, but we go into December, which the way that our coverage works would be eligible next year. But we have like the Minstrel Song remaster, we've got Dragon Quest Treasures, we've got the Crisis Core remaster. So luckily, those games are remasters, so they'll the context in which they'll be contextualized is more limited. But like those will have to be like in the when we're scheduling our end of the year podcast and trying to catch up on all our other stuff. Those games will have come out and like be already like burning the wick for next year, so to speak. Like it just doesn't end. And then we go into January and February where we're already we've already kind of talked about that at length, how those have gotten crowded, and surprise, they've gotten even more crowded in the last week, and we'll get to that. But to try to loop this back into Harvestella. So I know, James, that you've only gotten a few hours into it, but can you just tell us, like, as you like at the outset of the game, like the initial objectives that are given to you, does it immediately like throw you in to like the RPG dungeoning aspect of it, or does it like more go slow roll it into the city and the life sim part? Or I'm just like wondering like how it presents itself to the player in the first couple hours.
So basically, once the exposition starts going, very quickly you get a reason for why you want to explore the first dungeon. And then like right after that, you're told, okay, so now you can explore all of these other dungeons in any order you want to, though there is a suggested order. And that's going to be in the chapter after that, which apparently is really long because there's 3 separate dungeons, which means 3 separate like story arcs in this chapter that are about as long as the last chapter you did. But
Each chapter is a handful of hours long.
Well, the first chapter is a handful of hours long. From what I can tell, the next chapter is like 10 to 15 hours long, if not more.
Well, I meant like each dungeon that comprises the next chapter, you're expecting to be about the same length. Yep. And it's kind of fun though that it's like non-linear in that way, where you just kind of it's more open-ended or wide linear, I guess is that the term now, in terms of being able to say like, all right, go have fun, go do what you want.
One other thing I will say about the game is that it's only available on Switch and PC.
Right.
And I am playing the PC version on Steam Deck. It works really well. The main reason I wanted to play it on Steam Deck was because I heard that it ran well there. And more specifically, I heard that it did not run well on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
I have definitely.
I remember some of the demo impressions, right, called out the Switch performance as being pretty terrible. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
The demo wasn't on PC.
Yeah, it was just on Switch. So
I think I remember Josh lamenting, like, imagine if this was just a Switch exclusive and you had to just deal with it,
like some other
SMT5
games.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
One day,
happy first anniversary, SMT5.
But yeah, the game works really well on Steam Deck to the point where it seems to be Steam Deck aware, which means it's a game that has like aspects of the Steam API that calls for like system functions on the Steam Deck. Like normally, if you're playing an RPG on Steam Deck and you reach a point where you need to type in something, you just have to know the shortcut to open up the software keyboard. Which most people, if you have a Steam Deck for like more than like a month, you've memorized that by now. It's just like
I don't memorize it.
Steam
I don't know.
button plus the oh.
Here I am sitting like I don't know how to do that.
Don't worry, I'll speak for both of us.
But,
Well, that's the Steam button and what was the shortcut?
Steam button and X. That's
There,
the
okay.
shortcut.
I don't know that either.
All
But
right, well, we learned something
oh
today.
wow.
James is just operating on another level.
Well, anyway,
But the important thing is that
game,
Harvestella does it for you. You can be dumb. You can be a
Yes.
dumb like me and still get the
Yeah.
keyboard up.
Yeah, so it's very clearly like it runs basically perfectly. It's like a locked 60 FPS at
Cool.
720p. It's got a decent amount of battery life on that setting, and I mean, as far as I can tell, like there's no actual graphical settings besides resolution and frame rate. So
Is the aspect ratio of the resolution like 16 by 10 and all that too?
no,
like
I
it
think it's
supports that?
16 by 9.
All right.
I think
That
it's
doesn't
yeah,
actually bother me, but I was just curious. I used my first PC monitor was a 16 by 10 monitor. So I'm very used to having like the letterboxing on games that were only supporting 16 by 9. So that doesn't I know some people get really frustrated by that, but I guess I got used to it early on. But yeah, cool to hear that it is. I've been playing a little bit more. I've been sidetracked by another responsibility, but that you'll hear about next week. But I've been continuing to play Star Ocean: The Divine Force on Steam Deck, and it runs okay, but I kind of wish it wasn't as nice as Cold Steel was. So I'm kind of learning that I'm learning quickly though that even if a game runs just okay on Steam Deck, just all the benefits of even that have been something that I've been willing to like put up with. Where it's like, yeah, it's okay, it doesn't run the best, but I can play it in bed or on the couch, or I can take it with me to some place. Like all those trade-offs make it worth it. But I don't think I've actually ever played a game yet that is truly Steam Deck verified. Is that the term that they use for the ones that actually give like the green check mark to?
Yeah.
It's either just been unknown or not is Harvestella officially Steam Deck verified?
No,
I don't know
but
how
it's
the whole
only a matter
process
of time.
works. Gotcha. Is that a Steam assigned, like a Valve assigned
Yes.
prompt, or does
Yes.
the publisher do that?
It's a Valve assigned thing. Though obviously publishers can request their game to be tested because it makes sense, because on Valve's end it's like, oh well, if somebody thinks that a game should work, it makes more sense to, from their standpoint, to test that one, because it's like, well, yeah.
Well, because they can take information.
I wonder if they're ever gonna like crowdsource that like process and just find a way to like kind of streamline that so it's not the bottleneck isn't on Valve's end.
If you install the Decky Loader plugin thing on Steam Deck, which again, that's something that most people aren't going to do because you have to go into like desktop mode and do some things to install it. There is a plugin that lists the Proton DB rating for a game on the game's page on Steam. So if you want to have another way of checking before downloading a game, if it's like actually unsupported or if it's just like a quirk or something that's out of date, that's useful. But again, like most people aren't going to be using like a plugin loader, even if there are like a bunch of plugins that I would recommend. So
And is a Proton DB rating like another like crowdsource thing where people are playing it like on Steam OS on a PC, assigning like how compatible it is?
Yeah, and then like Proton DB even has like a separate section for people that are playing on Steam Deck. So I would say if you own a Steam Deck, Proton DB is probably the first place you should check to see if a game works instead of actually checking Steam.
No, it's good to know because I've only ever played the 2 games on it, Cold Steel and Divine Force, and then I was thinking of playing. I mentioned it earlier, Soul Hackers on it, and I guess people have a lot of. It's one of those things where you have to enjoy tinkering, because I see people say like, well, if you have this one running on this experimental fork of Proton, it works a bit better, but it still has these issues, but input these launch commands and it ends up running a bit better and things like that. So even if I do Soul Hackers next, I still quite won't be at the point where I played something that just works flawlessly verify it out of the box, but I'm still having a great time with a few things that I have tinkered with on there.
Consider trying out a Solitaire and Space Cadet Pinball.
Why those specifically?
No, I'm just sort of thinking of like really, really old like Windows installed games way back in the day of like what I used to play. It's like just try them out on Steam Deck and see how it goes.
Hey, you couldn't play them on the couch before, and now you can. So
I think there's like a browser version of a Space Cadet Pinball that I saw like a few months back. I'm like, and I think I played it for like a few hours. I was like, you know what? This is actually game of the year.
Yeah, nostalgia.
Well,
I'll
I've been
draw all over
doing
judgment.
completely different instead. I bought a wireless monitor. I've been streaming from the PC instead of using the Steam Deck. That was my
How's that? Wait, there's wireless monitors?
Yes, it has no wires. I can
What
only
the
stream it within my room, but I've been playing it on my bed. I mean, I show you that picture before.
Okay, I need to back up. Like, is it battery powered? Like, just
monitor's battery powered, and there's a dongle that's relaying the signal, so I'm just playing it wirelessly on my bed.
Okay, what's the battery life on that? How big it is, and is it actually like good?
the whole thing is
4
just a giant
hours,
battery.
sort of lag free, and what is it? Lost my train of thought here. 4 hours and wireless. How's that?
Like, how's like the input latency?
I didn't have lag. I was playing Bayonetta free on it, and Street Fighter free.
What?
I was playing Street Fighter free. I beat Gil no problem on it. I was like, okay.
Why Street Fighter 3?
Because the fighting game is perfectly a test lag.
Yeah, that's how you test lag pretty much. And Street Fighter 3 has like a parry mechanic that like is pretty, have to be pretty good with it. Not landed reliably. Man, that sounds cool. What the fuck, Chow?
But yeah, I bought this because I was watching this video. It's like this this lady was playing Genshin Impact on a wireless monitor. And she's like, yeah, there's a Kickstarter for a newer model. So I tried buying a newer model, and that's what happened. So I'm just playing on my bed.
You got influenced.
Wait, so where do you put the monitor? Just like mounted on the wall, or
no? Just playing it because it has no wires, right? I just.
But does it have like a? I'm still trying to like paint this mental image. Is it like? Do you have it like kickstanded up at the foot of your bed or something?
No, it just has a little.
Chow has provided a picture of this in Discord. Yeah, he literally just has the monitor like on like cushions by his bed, and he's just having like a good life.
Yeah, I mean that's the real lazy solution.
This is funny as fuck. That's
now I'm not constrained by the hardware limitations. Now I can just use my PC.
Holy shit! Yeah, just laying on the cushion, having a good time. I am okay. What the fuck, Chow?
Technology is amazing.
That's crazy. I didn't know they even had that shit.
I like how Chow just came in here and just completely put us on another tangent.
What will they think
Technology is amazing.
Everyone's too busy investing in Steam Decks. Like, why not just steam it from my PC?
I like how before it was like PC at your desk or PC on your couch, and now it's like PC on my wireless monitor propped up against my cushion on my bed.
We're here living in 2022. Meanwhile, Chow's like 2082.
As a slight tangent, I was having issues with the official Steam Deck dock. Like, I couldn't get it to output unless I was in desktop mode. But then, like, I tried it again the next day and it worked perfectly fine. It just immediately in the Steam gaming mode output perfectly, no issues. And then the day after that, it went back to like having issues again. So I'm having some issues with, I think, the firmware. I don't know if my cable is not quite rated right or what, but when it works really well. And I'm hoping Steam. I've seen a few people on like various Reddits and things like that, kind of just trying to troubleshoot it. So I'm guessing once they know all the different like specific user hardware configurations, that they'll get it sorted out. But enough of that tangent. So thank you, James, for talking about your initial impressions of Harvestella with us. Just another one of those games that we want to make sure we do give a look in before we get just immediately swarmed by all the other things coming out. And one of which I know a few people on the site have been poking at and have been really excited for, is, of course, the other game that came out in the last 7 days. And that is, or literally came out, the release date was yesterday, I think, officially, Tactics Ogre Reborn. So the history of this game's announcement and release, we've kind of talked about a lot, and how it was originally leaked and then leaked and then leaked and then leaked again before officially being announced. But it's finally here, and I know that Josh has been one of the ones that has been primarily playing it for us on the site. So I know you've been sharing a lot of thoughts on this. You have played the original release, or either the original release or the PSP release. I'm not sure which or both.
I played both.
And it seemed like you had a lot of opinions on it, but I had not played the original release, so some of the stuff where you're kind of comparing what you
This is me
knew
being a
from
nerd.
then, what you have now. Yeah, no, I enjoy people being nerds. It's a good thing to have. So I'll just hand it off over to you. Like your thoughts on Tactics Ogre Reborn so far, as someone who has been a nerd for this game.
Yeah, I played the original Tactics Ogre, the one came out in '95. I think I played that on PS1, and then I played Let Us Cling Together on PSP. I forgot what year that came out. But I played more so Let Us Cling Together than the original. I do like the original a lot as well. So I was really excited for Reborn. They were. I love Tactics Ogre. It's one of my favorite games consistently. Just the incredible characters, incredible narrative, incredible gameplay. Like I love it so much. So I was really excited for Reborn, and my general impressions, like I'm about 30 hours in. I'm almost done with a route because this game has a law neutral and chaos route that you can undertake. You have like different story events will happen, and there are different characters you can recruit on each route as well. Um, so, but like this game is for people coming into it who have played either of the previous releases of Tactics Ogre. This is very much like on the narrative front and the characters front, obviously the same game, but it is very different gameplay wise. They made a lot of great quality of life improvements, but they also changed up a lot of the gameplay systems, and I'm not really sure if that's hitting for me as much as I wanted to. Like I was ready to really, really fall in love with this game, but a lot of the new systems just don't really jive with me. Um, so one of the new systems they did in this game is they have these blue and red stat buff and debuff cards that randomly appear in battle in stages. So in the game, you're going from like place to place on an overhead map. Once you get into a certain region, you'll engage in a fight. There'll be story cutscenes before the fight starts, before and after sometimes, to give context of what's going on in like the overall story and why, or maybe a story of like why you're there in the first place in that region, and so forth. And then, as you deploy your units and as the battle goes on, just randomly through RNG, these cards will start appearing in the middle of battle. And when you or an enemy lands on a tile that has these cards, they pick them up for temporary stat boosts. So a card may show up that have like a sword icon on it, and if a unit lands on that tile, they'll like pick up the card and like use it on themselves. So that sword icon will be like, oh, physical attack is up. There might be a one that's like a wand and that's a magical attack up. And these
I
are
just want to make sure I understand correctly.
Yeah.
These are new.
Yes, these
and they're
stat
random.
cards. They randomly appear as the fight goes on. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, just want to make sure I understood that.
How long did it take for these cards to appear? Because a lot of like early access players never mentioned this card system.
They appear very early, like within like the first few turns. Like they appear very frequently as well as turns are passing. So they're pretty, like what they appear very early on. Like,
but also like in the game, like in the first level, second level, sort of thing.
Like I want to say they start appearing like very, like within the first few stages for sure. Like there's this mechanic that's like very, it's just there now. It's not like something that's like gradually introduced to you. It's just kind of like a fact of life here. So these cards give you a substantial boost. Like even one of them will give you like almost a 1.5 like times damage boost. Like they are pretty substantial. And a unit can stack 4 of these cards up on them. So you can have like a mixture of like physical attack ups and magical attack ups on them. There are also other cards that boost the amount of MP restored per turn. There are other cards that trigger auto skills more often because they revamped the skill system in this game. Some of the skills now that your units can automatically activate per turn. For example, like meditate on units which increased restored MP even more. that's an auto skill, and if you land on like a card that'll trigger that more often, you'll activate meditate more often. Berserk, for example, for berserkers, on auto skill, so if they stack up on auto skill cards, they'll activate berserk more often when their turn begins. And then less so that you see. Of course, I mentioned there's also red debuff cards, and these do not often appear as blue stat cards, so they're kind of like negligible. But from what I remember, the only things that these debuff cards affect is that they just wipe off any stat buff cards that it's on a unit. So obviously, if they appear, your units don't want to land on them. Preferably, you try to push an enemy unit into them if they have cards on them, or they just walk into them on their own, and so on. And if a unit has like 4 cards stacked up on them and they pick up another stat card, they'll like bump out like the oldest stat buff card that they have. So there's kind of like shuffling if you make them shuffle through them, these stat buff cards. And I think early on, like I kind of got used to it, but I don't like the way that it changes up the gameplay of the game. It feels too overpowered in both ways. It's very swingy. Like there'll be units where there are like, it's just, I guess I should mention that this game also has had like a big stat inflation on its values compared to the previous versions. Like very early on, like in like late chapter 1, early chapter 2, you're already seeing values of like a unit having like 800 HP, which is absurd in that part of the game if you're playing previous version. So just the stats in general are just bumped way the fuck up arbitrarily in this game. And so it kind of has this reliance of like, if you don't have these stat buff cards and you're just playing normally, you can still output some damage, but it feels a tad too long to kill enemy units if you're going at them with a squad that hasn't been that doesn't really have much cards on them. On the flip side though, if RNG favors you and you've been stacking up on stat buff cards for like your hard hitting units, you can like easily like 2 to 3 shot enemy units if you're playing to advantage of like if they're weak to like magic damage or weak to like physical attacks. Like you'll just wipe them off the face of the earth if RNG favored you and you stacked up.
But when I think about this sort of mechanic from like an aerial glance, I'm like, I kind of like a little bit of randomness in games sometimes, keep you on your toes, to be like a little bit, change things up, have a little bit of that, it's the reason why we like people like roguelikes at times, because there's just an element of randomness that you kind of have to just deal with. And sometimes it's in your favor and sometimes it's not. But this sort of sounds like there's just like, this is suddenly a really big component to a game that didn't have it before.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I'm kind of hesitant on it.
Yeah, it's also not like great as well, like for some like more delicate fights, because as you get further and further to the game, you'll just have like bosses who are like pre-stacked up on 4 cards at the beginning of battle, and they are a big problem because they just do a shit ton of damage to your units from the offset. They can easily like not one shot you. They can say 2 to 3 shot like any units they see in the game. So you have to plan around that. And this is coupled with one of the new mechanics in the game, which is there's a union level for your party, where you have a hard level caps in the game now. These level caps will gradually raise as you progress to the story. So very, very, very early on when you're like starting the game, your union level will be at 3. So all your characters can only go up to level 3. And then once you do like the next story fight, it might like get bumped up to level 5. And then as you do like another story battle, it'll get bumped up to level 8, and then so forth and so on. Like that level cap will gradually increase, but it is meant to like obviously dissuade you from like, you cannot over level in this game. You can't that's just none of that.
And that's a new mechanic too.
Yes, union level is a new mechanic. Usually, like if in older entries, like if there was something that was like really, really like difficult for you, like you always had the option to go grind out levels if you wanted. And that was like it like for me, I don't mind it that much. I know a lot of people have their fair share of grievances because obviously it's an arbitrary level cap, and like this level cap is usually almost always like 2 levels below the like boss units. So like you're fighting at a forced disadvantage because the developers said so. Um, and for me, like I don't really mind that much because when I used to play older Tactics Ogre games, I never really grinded that much in the first place. But if you wanted to like get your units to level cap immediately, there's also another new system in place. They took out random encounters from the from older titles, and they replaced it with like a training mechanic where like you can go to like places you've like captured and conquered, and you can like just go to like a training stage in them where you can like grind out levels, grind out weapon levels. Um, the only thing that changes up with them is you do not like enemy units in those training stages don't have loot, so you can't like loot anything from them. And when your character like dies in them, obviously they don't have like the timer that like that makes it so it's like a permanent death if you don't get to them in time. So it's obviously more of a low stakes like hey, but I never really found the need to really use training stages that much because my character is just like I use like generally the same party, like almost a stable party almost throughout the game. With a few changes here and there depending on like new characters I get. Um, but I had no problem like keeping them at level cap just by using them consistently.
It
So
kind of almost reminds me of like this. What are they called? The skirmish missions in Triangle Strategy.
yeah,
There-
a little bit like those.
Where there's kind of like very generic versions of maps you've already cleared that you just do to try to catch up the other units that you've recently recruited
Yeah.
or things like
The
that.
the weird thing about this is unlike Triangle Strategy and unlike older Tactics Ogre games, like these training stages, you do not get like any income from them, like no money at all. While like random encounters like let us cling together, that was like a decent way to like get loot so you can sell it off and just get money in general. While in this game, you can there's a very real possibility if like you're very gung ho about like spending stuff, you can like run out of money and like have not a great not you don't have great ways to like kind of get money back pretty fast in this game.
I remember
unlike-
Triangle Strategy also like money actually would like. I don't like it when games have an economy where you're just rich the whole time and you can afford everything you want. So in Triangle Strategy, there were times in that game where I was really poor, but you could always just like grind as many of those missions as you wanted to afford whatever you want. If you put in the time, you could get the currency back. So it was kind of nice just to have the option, even if it required grinding to get that.
in Reborn, I struggled to find a way that like if you really exhausted your money and like was irresponsible for it, there's like nothing you can like reliably grind over and over again to kind of replenish that stock. You'd have to just try to continue on with the main story and like sell off like things that like drop in like loot and stuff. Obviously, there's some side stages you can unlock as well if you know where to look to get more of that as well. So that's kind of like where I the it's kind of a weird thing where I really really love Tactics Ogre, but I just don't like a lot of the new changes that they put. Even though the quality of life stuff from like UI wise is great, like crafting.
And
for
also, does it have
example.
like the turbo mode?
Oh right, yeah. There's a fast forward mode which definitely speeds up battles, but like it makes a difference. But it's not like a flat out skipping animation. It's just it makes them faster. But there's nothing that's like an ultra fast mode where like you just like choose an attack and then numbers will pop out. Like everything still plays out just like in faster. So it's not like that crazy of a difference. But it reminds you of how slow Tactics Ogre was like in normal speed. When you turn it off, you're like, oh yeah, that's how it was like. So yes, there is that option. Crafting in this game in Reborn is way better than it was and Let Us Cling Together, where there's no chance of failure in crafting, and the way that like you can pretty much like craft multiples of things very fast, and say like I want to craft like upgrades to like a chess piece that's like on 8 of my units. There's now just an option to just like craft all upgrades on the people that are wearing that chest piece all at once. It'll say, this is how much it's going to cost. You're like, okay. And then it'll just do it all for you right there and then. So it's very simple to do that now, and way less cumbersome than in the Let Us Cling Together, where it was like one by one by one by one. And it always had like a pot stirring animation where sometimes it could just fail as well. So it's like a very time consuming process, while everything here is just very instant when it comes to that. And voice acting is, I think it's largely fine. I've been switching between the languages. A funny thing you can do in this game actually is, in the middle of a cutscene, you can actually switch between languages in the middle of a cutscene. So like a person will be saying something in English, and then if you choose Japanese, the very next line they say, it'll be in Japanese, and they can flip it
I
back to English.
actually wish more games did that. That's actually kind of neat.
Yeah, because you know some games will have you like, oh, you have to reboot the game or go back to the main menu to like switch the voice track or something. While this game is just like, it's very seamless if you want to go that route. It's not all the line deliveries like hit like are amazing, but like it's a very theatrical style of like voice acting. It's a kind of theater play. It's very hammed up in some aspects, but it's amusing. I primarily am on the Japanese voice track, but I went back and re-listened to cutscenes with the English voice track, and they're largely fine. Like I think you're not really missing out on like if you go one or the other, or you can just turn it off. And there's an option to turn off voice acting. You don't have to like deal with any sliders, and then you might hear just still a murmur. It's just you have the option to just turn it off. And yeah, it's just there's also like a big gameplay mechanic change as well from previous versions, where each class has these special moves called finishing moves, and in previous versions you needed to build up another resource called TP to activate those. And this one they got rid of that mechanic, and everything is tied to MP now. So your spells, any like manual skills that you activate, that's tied to MP, and finishing moves are tied to MP. So MP regen and management is pretty like very, very valuable in this game. So that switches up a lot of like things. Like for example, Adam, like Rune Fencers and Valkyries are actually really good in this game now, which historically Rune Fencers and Valkyries were not a good class. Because of this mechanic, they can now like spam stuff, their finishing moves like Ruination, because that's just tied to MP. They don't have to like wait to build up TP for it. And because Rune Fencers and Valkyries have Meditate as an auto skill now, they can like more reliably build up their MP resources to do these finishing moves. So like a lot of like finer balancing stuff like that like drastically changes up the gameplay for like a lot of classes. So in a certain aspect as well, like because finishing moves are much more of a you'll be using them a lot more now because they're just freely available through MP now. In some respect, you're just kind of your most damaging moves in this game are like just spamming finishing moves because
because you can use it right away rather than having to build up TP. Okay,
right. You can use it right away if you have a stable income of like MP. Like right now, my strategy, oddly enough, I didn't know this was gonna work, but because I was thinking about it, and like most of my party is like just comprised of Rune Fencers and Valkyries because they have access to Meditate, so they can passively regain MP. They have access to spells, and they also have access to their finishing moves. So I can just plan and they also have access to like a healing spell as well. So they're kind of like they're all around like very stable and work together really well because they can make use of like all the resources they come across and any stat buff cards.
Yeah, because in the original release, or in the PSP release, Rune Fencers were sort of like a jack of all trades. Like they had some magic, some healing, some physical, but they weren't really good at anything. But because of these changes, that kind of changed the dynamic pretty dramatically.
Yeah, they could also like and generally like in the PSP version, like equipping like a lot of heavy armor like wasn't really a great strategy because like you'd get your turn much later on than what you want. While in here, like equipping like heavy armor is kind of valuable because all the inflated health value or inflated stat values. So having like reliable survivability, like just to have the difference between like a move killing you or like barely leaving you at 1 HP makes a different like all the difference in the world in this version, because like there'll be times where like you really want that extra turn for that unit to get the job done when it comes to completing mission objectives. So it's, you know, I know there's like a lot of nerd shit when it comes to Tactics Ogre and going really really deep into like what is different, what is the same, and I don't know, like I don't think this is like the definitive version of like Tactics Ogre. It's a really good version for newcomers. Like this is the most user friendly version of Tactics Ogre. It's still an excellent strategy RPG, but as a fan of the original Tactics Ogre and Let Us Cling Together, like it's one of those things that like I wonder what this game would be like if it didn't have if the stat buff cards were just optional, just like an option that you can turn off, and like you can like revert the values back to like what it was like in Let Us Cling Together. And I wonder if you revert that back, would it still be, would it like shift that dynamic, and like would it make it too easy because finishing moves are so powerful because you don't have to worry about TP anymore? Like, is that would that be would that be a good compromise? Would that change it up too much to be too much in your favor? Like, I don't think this is like significantly harder than the previous versions. Like early on, like I want to say like halfway to like to 3/4 of the game, like it's like, to me, I don't find it that difficult.
Yeah, I know Quentin, who is a contributor to the site, was saying it felt a lot harder. But I was sort of thinking to myself, I've only played the PSP version, which I love. Like the PSP version also has some bite in places. It's pretty. It can get tricky.
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure they're both, you know, difficult and maybe in slightly different ways. Like the game just, I'm not going to say these games are hard, but you know, they're not pushovers either. There's some challenge.
Yeah, there's definitely like big brain strategies they have to employ sometimes. Like sometimes you want, okay, I'm gonna put this person out there, and if they die here, you know, they won't permanently be dead because I stopped like 3 turns. When 3 of their turns to like resurrect them, which is like takes a long time for them to actually like permanently die. But like the real value of them just being laying dead is like they're like a body bag that like will block enemy units at some point. So sometimes you're just like tactically like, you know,
or sometimes you just need them to be a distraction for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, hey, distract these guys, and then you're going to die.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll come back for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the objective isn't like to keep all your units alive always. Sometimes, and I think that like it feels so swingy that I don't really know if it's like significantly harder. Like the only thing that's hard about it for me so far is when the game like just throws bullshit at you, like when there are bosses like in the back half of the game that are just like pre-stacked with the 4 stat buff cards right away. So you're kind of left to like really go for the scraps because the power balance is already way like
that's interesting that they can be like, okay, because of the way of the union level, the boss will always be 2 levels above you. Plus, with the new card mechanic, we will give them these bonuses inherently.
Yeah.
So it's a deliberate choice that they've tweaked up the difficulty in that way.
Yeah. I think that those are the only like bottlenecks that I've had to like scratch my head a little. But other than that, it's like, I don't know. It just feels so. It's not like what I really wanted out of like Tactics Ogre, like in terms of like how you revamp the games. Because I'm always open to like them trying something new, but that it's not necessarily mean that I'll always enjoy what they put out. You know,
it sounds like kind of like if we step back a bit, they made a lot of changes to this game, and sort of inevitably, it's not going to land for everyone, depending on what they liked and what they didn't or whatever.
Yeah.
And it sounds like instead of making this like just Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together with, you know, a small tweak here or there and possibly make it a definitive version, it's almost like just like an alternate version. Like here's just a different version of Tactics Ogre, better in some ways, worse in others, depending on personal preference. So it seems like people could clearly make a case why they might prefer this version, or why they say, actually, I just like the PSP version more, or whatever.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. So I mean, this is just it is another new version of Tactics Ogre. It's very different from its previous releases. Just like how Let Us Cling Together was very different from the original Tactics Ogre.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the class. Well, you sort of talked about the union level, but like class level versus individual levels, and things like that.
So one of the big things they touted, in this game is like they reverted back to how the original Tactics Ogre did it, where jobs and classes are now tied to a unit. And they're not tied to like a class or job level. So everything is dictated by the unit. And haven't really like had any problem leveling someone up like to current level, because one, obviously there's class marks, so you can like take any existing unit and like switch them to a job. But also because of union level, there'll be like a lot of battles where like the majority of like your main party will not just like get experience because they're at level cap. So all that experience, if you have someone like at level 1 or at a lower level, all that experience that you gain is like all funneled into that unit, because all the other units cannot take that experience. If everyone can get like experience, and that would be divided up into like them equally. But if it's just like one or two like units that are under leveled, all that experience that you would gain after battle are all funneled into them. So so they catch up very, very fast. There's also experience charms. So the charms are just a new minor system in this game, where there are some charms that just like you can consume them and they'll give your unique experience. So sometimes if you get like a shitload of experience after battle and no one can make use of them, it'll actually take a good chunk of that experience and make it into an experience charm, which you can consume to like a lower level unit later or whatever. There's also charms that you get that can change a unit's element, because there's like a whole elemental system in this game that has like advantages and disadvantages against certain units, so you can make use of like bonus damage, so you can kind of more freely switch up your a unit's like elemental composition, so they're better equipped to face off, whatever units they might be facing in like a certain stage. So you can, and those charms are just they're handed out pretty freely. Like it's not like something that you'll be like scrapping for, because they'll be in loot bags, they'll be in after stage rewards, and so forth. So like jobs being assigned to units again, and with how the experience can funnel into like lower level units, and because of the union level stuff, like I never have had to think about like levels in this game as much as I did on like lower earlier releases of Tactics Ogre. So that part of the game, like it's just kind of like a breeze now.
Mm-hmm.
So
now I know this is going to be hard for Josh and Adam to potentially put themselves in this mind space, but let's say you're maybe a younger person or a person who's only recently come to strategy RPGs, and you're listening to a bunch of boomers talk about Tactics Ogre and how it was different between back in the day and now. But if just the game, just Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, Tactics Ogre Reborn, if it's something that you don't have nostalgia for, and you just you're going to play the Steam version or a console version because it's the most convenient way to play, like why should people be interested in this game just more holistically?
I mean, it's still one of like the better strategy RPGs out there, because this is one of those games that like you cannot steamroll enemies, and like there'll be stages where like it's going to be difficult to take out every single enemy unit, and there'll be stages where it's like, okay, I have to focus on the objective target no matter what, and like I will sometimes have to like let people's bodies drop on my side to like achieve it. So it's one of those games that like there's no clean victory most of the time. You're usually trying to like fight till the bitter end, trying to make something work. And it really forces you to think about what types of unit compositions you have, what kind of party you're going in with. You have to consider the environment. There's elevation bonuses depending on like the units that you're using. It's a very old school type of strategy RPG that does require you to think a bit of like how to achieve victory, especially at like the later parts of the game when they really ramp up the difficulty. Especially in this version, where like the Tactics Ogre is rarely about putting the odds in your favor. You kind of have to make your own luck almost. Especially doubly now that like you're kind of at the whim of like cards at some point too. So for anyone who's looking for like a pretty challenging and demanding strategy RPG, it's still one of the better ones out there. Even with the tweaks, I still like it a lot. And also because like the story and the characters are just like really excellent. Like that's always been one of the shining features of Tactics Ogre throughout any of its releases. It's like there's such a compelling cast in such a fucked up world. Honestly, it is a very much a story about the brutality of war, how it changes people, how it ropes people into like doing stuff they don't want to, and it's very replayable because there's like 3 routes and and each of those routes are pretty different from one another.
Yeah, and can I add a thing here? So yeah, first of all, there's story branches, and it gets pretty like there's a lot of different permutations on how things can go. Like if you played Triangle Strategy earlier in the year, which also had some story branches, this Tactics Ogre has more, and they're a little bit more. There's a little bit more that can like alter how like a scene or might play out, or how a character might act depending on what exactly you did. But also, Tactics Ogre has just like a lot of also like side content, which by that I mean like there might be side stories that have like side missions and like actual like character story narrative writing in them that are like compelling and interesting, but they're optional and they're just just like a side battle here or over there, and it all helps to build like a really great world with a really good cast. And there's also just going more pure gameplay. There's these like dungeon areas that you can go to. The most infamous, I guess, is the Palace of the Dead, which is like a 100-floor dungeon. And that's really just kind of captivating more on a gameplay front, where there's just like a lot of tough battles, a lot of cool battles. You can get a lot of great like items and loot and equipment, and there's even some like side quests to get new classes and characters that kind of involve different things. So it's just like a really dense game. And I assume a lot of that sort of stuff is, getting away from more like the individual battle mechanics are pretty much the same. And there's just a lot to do, and it's all like compelling. It's not just like, oh, here's just some random optional, battle over here. There's just like a lot of extra story, extra character stuff. It's just very, very dense and very, very. It's just cool. It's cool.
Yeah. It's very compact in the way that like it presents itself. It doesn't really overstay like it's welcome with like certain scenes and characters. Like it keeps the story like moving along. You're never like in one spot for too long in the game, and things happen. You're always in for a roller coaster ride, unlike what happens in throughout the story, because you take control of a character named Denim. You cannot change the character's name at the first playthrough. You can in subsequent playthroughs, but because it's voice acted now, they actually do say Denim's name out loud in the script. So they wanted to keep that intact. And just like and seeing his rise to power, like him and his relationship with his sister, and how that like and how war really like transforms that relationship throughout the game, and all the characters that you meet. Because you don't necessarily play as the good guys in this game. There's no good guys and bad guys in this game. Everything is kind of in war. One might say there are no good guys and bad guys. There's only a violence feeding into violence for whatever reason.
As an outsider, like, of course, before this game had voice acting, I would see people like share just lines of dialogue from this game, and it's got a bit of like, I want to say edge to it, but I know when people say edgy, they almost say it like disparagingly, but it just seems to have like a bite to it that a lot of games just don't. Like I'm trying to kind of vocalize what makes me interested in the game from a distance, and it just seems like the characters are really well-rounded, and they have like layers to their personality, and they're very opinionated, and it's not very it's not like this is your party of 7 quirky characters, and they're your good guys, and then they're going to go on this quest, and it just seems like it has a little bit more nuance to it, has a little bit of bite to it. And this is something that is definitely on my list because I obviously Adam has spoken about how much he's enjoyed. I think, like he said, he's played Let Us Cling Together was the first time he's played it, but I know he's put a ton of hours into that. And has spoken highly of it for a while now. So I don't know. The word of mouth in this game is good, and I'm glad that both of you were able to kind of elucidate both on a gameplay perspective, when that's kind of where Josh immediately headed to, and then from a narrative perspective, which is where kind of Adam headed to, what makes this game so special in both of your eyes.
Yeah, I still think it's a pretty excellent strategy RPG. I do have my quips with it, but it's still like if you're just coming into it for the first time, definitely give it a shot. It's a very very dense game with a lot of hours of content. If you want to,
One final thing, maybe. I've heard that. So I know a lot of times when we post about this on our Twitter feed, people talk about like, can you turn off the smoothing?
Yeah.
I've heard that the game looks better in motion, like the way that the sprites animate, and that helps. Is there any truth to that, you think, or do you just kind of have to accept the sprites for what they are?
It's a little bit of both, right? Because it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So some people might be more bothered to it. Like honestly, like I got used to it within like the first like 15 minutes, and then it's never like because when you look at the character models themselves, like in person, like you see that there was definitely some sprite work that they did to kind of like make these characters more detailed in their sprites. It's just there's something about the way they like kind of blend into each other that feels a little bit off. But in motion, it still looks crisp in motion. It's hard to like describe that in words. You really have to see it for yourself. But like it doesn't really bother me. I'm like, it looks fine. To me, it looks fine. But I know a lot of people feel very strongly about the what was put out, and I think it looks way better in motion in front of you than what compressed screenshots can convey. Because I think it actually looks pretty crisp when you're actually playing it for yourself, and it's really hard to like discern that from screenshots because screenshots make it look a bit more blurred than what it actually is in front of you. That's my opinion of it. I also really want to give a big shout out to like just the remastered soundtrack of this game. This game sounds incredible in Reborn. It is amazing. Like it's gonna be difficult to like how do we fare like a remastered soundtrack or a soundtrack to a remastered game into like game of the year stuff. But like for me like the new arrangements of these tracks is like phenomenal. Honestly, they really elevate like the sound design to like a new level in this game, and a lot of the sound effects are just really really great now in Reborn.
And just checking, there is no soundtrack toggle.
No, but
all right. I mean, I don't have like nostalgia for the old soundtrack. I just didn't know if there was an option.
It doesn't really need it for this one. This like they all sound very like. It sounds like a way more cleaned up version of like the original, but like they cleaned it up so well that like it just like it sounds like crazy good.
Not like it's not like they changed up the instrumentation.
Yeah,
where it's like this sounds very different. So
yeah. But it's that's my initial thoughts of Tactics Ogre. The review will be coming out fairly soon. We did get late code of that, so I really want to make sure that I convey my thoughts to it, like both new and newcomers and veterans in a presentable way. Because as you can hear from this, it's like I have a lot of opinions about Tactics Ogre and all of its versions. So it's still like I said, if you're new coming in, have fun. It's awesome. You will find it difficult. I promise you.
Well, thank you both, Adam and Josh, for talking to your thoughts on Tactics Ogre, and Josh specifically on Tactics Ogre Reborn. And now we'll earmark a very short time here for a game that we weren't really planning to talk about, but we kind of introduced it last week, and then we had a comment saying like, "Sure, I'd love to hear about that." And that, of course, is the game of the month, and that is Sonic Frontiers. I know I'm being a little bit cheeky here, but it's been kind of a game that I think the word of mouth on it seems to be surprisingly good, but also in a very like. Honestly, meme aspect to it.
I wouldn't say that. It's sincere. People
set us straight, James. Like what is give us the sincere mask off Sonic Frontiers impression. What is this game? Is it actually good?
It's my favorite 3D Sonic game.
What was your
I-
favorite before this?
Yeah,
Sonic
okay.
Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2.
Okay, yeah, because it's like one of those things that's like, okay, was it like it got us thinking, it's like, was there ever a good 3D Sonic game?
No,
There
no,
have been. Like, people like to shit on Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 nowadays, but those are good games, and I'll stand by that.
I mean, I
stand by
enjoyed them
that
when I was
too,
like a
but
kid, you know?
Can you say that your favorite Sonic game was Sonic 06?
No.
Something's wrong. Okay, so I have a friend that told me that he loved this game to bits. But when I asked him, "What's your opinion of Sonic 06?" I love it. What does that mean?
I
Dude,
didn't want to take the
that's a
wind out of
legend.
James's sails, but when he said it was like his favorite Sonic game, like relative to like what, like Sonic Heroes, Sonic Lost World. But all right, so obviously when Sonic
I would
Frontiers
be
was
insulted
first,
if anyone thought that Lost World was my favorite 3D Sonic game. God, I played that recently. It's terrible.
all right, so Sonic
but-
Frontiers, obviously this was like a month and a half ago or so. We got our first like IGN exclusive footage of it, and it did not show very well. And people, Sonic has a reputation, and people were taking the opportunity to make a lot of jokes and have a good laugh at its
To
expense.
be fair,
But now,
it was not a good first showing.
no,
either.
no,
You look at
I'm
that,
not
it's
saying
like,
I'm not saying it wasn't warranted.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
that the game is released, and being sincere, like the word that James used, a lot of people really do seem to be enjoying it. So you say this is your favorite 3D Sonic game, James? Just tell us about your time with Sonic Frontiers. I know this is a bit unorthodox for us, but I'm genuinely interested to hear your thoughts.
All right, so it is still a 3D Sonic game, so there is a fair amount of jank. Running around the open zones, or like each of the islands that the game is mostly made up of, feels great. I hate saying it like this, but you really do feel like Sonic. There's a lot of momentum in like how you're getting from point A to point B.
There's a
as you're
skill
exploring.
tree in this game.
There's a skill tree. The combat is surprisingly good. I
That-
did not
I
expect.
think that's the thing that surprises me the most. It's like people have been actually like praising the combat. I'm like, man, this is not show well at all, but they were marketing this.
Yeah, when you're actually playing the game, the combat feels pretty good. It feels snappy enough, and especially as you're unlocking the skill tree, there's a bunch of different like actions you can kind of flow into, and different like enemies that you're facing are like weaker to specific attacks. So it gets to a point where once you get really good at the combat, the less time combat takes up of like the game. You get into a flow, and it's not like it's stopping you. Like when combat's good, it feels like it's just a natural extension of the game flow, which honestly, that's the best thing you can hope for with a Sonic game. So
Yeah, I
When
mean,
you s-
it's gotten to the point that I'm like, man, like maybe I should try to like squeeze this in before the end of the year. Like I kind of like there's been enough talk about it, like from people I know, including James, that I was just like, do I like? I'm trying to think of, like the last Sonic game, like a 3D Sonic game I played. I'm like, was it Heroes? Whatever the one on the Wii was, I forgot.
oh, if you played the one on the Wii, no wonder you haven't played one recently, because
Is it the
Colors,
Secret
maybe?
Rings
Or
Secret
what?
Rings sucks.
No, it
What's
wasn't
that Sonic
Secret
game
Rings.
where he's using a sword?
Black
That's-
Knight.
I didn't play that. I think it was Colors or Heroes. I'm trying to remember which one. But I definitely have strayed away from Sonic 3D Sonic for a really long time after hearing But yeah, it's like this game also caught my attention. Like Frontiers also caught my attention because people have been like earnestly saying it's like, dude, if you like Metal Gear Rising, you'll like this game. I'm like,
Every
what?
boss has its own unique vocal theme,
Uh,
and they're really good. Like 1 second, let me see if I can.
Yeah,
find
like
the-
everyone I've talked to, it's like, no, you earnestly, if you like Metal Gear Rising, you'll like this game. I'm like, what? How do you even know what the fuck you're telling me? That's crazy.
Nano Machine, son.
that's like the last game I expected to be invoked for. Like, you should play this because it reminds me in a way of this. When you say it has good combat, when I think of 3D Sonic, I just think of homing attack. That's really all there is. So, like, how does the game play? Like, how does combat work?
So there is a homing attack still, but you can follow it up with like a string of like punches and kicks, like just mashing like square or X. You can kind of just keep punching and kicking the enemy for light damage, and then there's like a finishing kick that does a bit more damage. But if you press either of the bumpers before you finish the string, you can follow it up like a dodge up with a number of different attacks. And then there's also like a ranged attack you can get where if you hold the left trigger, where he'll like kind of like do sonic booms like with his feet and like shoot them at the enemy.
All right.
And then there's like if you do a boost in midair with like the right trigger, you can like follow up a boost with different attacks that are, and then there's like a stomp that you can combo in. So it's like you can like really get some like actual combo strings going if you memorize which actions can combo into what. And it's really fascinating just how much damage you can like get going in a short period of time.
Another thing that threw me off about this game, and I like saw some cutscenes of it, is I don't think they changed up the voice actor, but the voice direction, like he has like a much
Very
deeper
different,
voice
yeah.
in this game. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like Sonic went through puberty.
Yeah. To put it one way, people were not happy with the last couple of stories that Sonic had.
Mm.
Like Colors and Lost World were just, they were bad.
The
Like,
one before this was like Forces, right?
Forces, yeah. But even that one, it tried to be more serious, and then people were like, this is trying too hard.
I'm trying to remember. Forces was like you design your OC hedgehog or animal or in that as well. Okay. Yeah. I remember they had like a Persona 5 Joker costume for Forces. That's what I remember. And I was like, this is a weird game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing, I guess, that like Frontiers, despite all the shit that it got pre-release, like broke through people, and like people have just been enjoying it a lot. I think it's a great success story, and probably a great blueprint of like future Sonic games. At least for the next batch, I imagine. Even through all the marketing, so like it's not open world, okay, it's open zone gameplay, and it's like, oh, all right, well. So, but it seems like the new formula works and has been jiving with a lot of people, and it's gotten me to like at least think about like maybe I should go pick this up and give it a shot and try it out.
It's broken Steam records for most concurrent players of a Sonic game. It's like over double what Mania had at launch.
Okay, yeah, and Mania was that the official but made by like a fan made group, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember like I'm trying to remember like all the Sonic games from recently. It's like, what was that one?
Okay. Oh yeah, like I forget the exact history, like with I think it's like Headcanon and Tyler Hesse, and like made an official, like they made like the first of the iOS ports, and someone in here who knows all this is gonna say like, no, it's completely wrong. But yeah, I know what you mean by like an official fan game. And obviously people say like Mania is the direction this series needs to go, and hasn't really gone that way, but at least it seems like, here's Sonic Team themselves saying like, hey, we can do something, novel and different.
They need that, It's Sonic Team. If Sonic Team has been in a downward spiral for a while now, so
we've talked about this, Mark, a few times on Steam, but Sonic Frontiers is overwhelmingly positive with 5,000 reviews. That's insane.
Yeah. Also, probably worth mentioning, going back to our previous topic, Tactics Ogre on Steam, when you're comparing like concurrent players to other Square Enix releases, is actually doing pretty good, like relatively. It was like at 8,000, which compared to like Star Ocean, that's like almost double or whatever.
Or Dio Field, which
Field
track or 1,000.
But it had like 8,000. Like, hey, and I think Valkyrie. I'm not sure what Valkyrie ended up at.
Valkyrie's a weird one because that came out right on the same day as Tactics Ogre.
Delayed from the console release.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's that weird choice by Square Enix, but that's Square Enix in a nutshell recently. A lot of weird choices.
And we'll talk more about platform choices with Square Enix coming up. But thank you, James, for talking about Sonic Frontiers, and I'm actually like hella interested in this. Just
I hear you can fish with Big the Cat, and I'm like, okay, well,
I've seen a lot of
alright.
like memes and fan art for fishing with Big the Cat, so apparently people have really endeared to that specific aspect of the game.
I think there's like some Soap Shoes DLC as well. So I'm just like, okay.
Well, I just hope that they're not like this traditional Sonic fans. If it doesn't play like Sonic 2, then it's a shit game. It's usually what I get from the basics of all the Sonic fans I've seen.
Okay. Well, maybe if I somehow find time, I will try to play this game and see what I think of it.
We know we don't have time. That's the sad part.
That's why I said if I somehow find that, like if I just see like time, like if I just like look under my bed, like oh, there's time right there. Holy shit!
If you found time to beat Persona 5 well, you surely have time for Sonic Frontiers.
Remember when I said I was going to play that when it came out on PC? Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. It's on my list. I do like the idea of like, I never played Pokemon because I was playing Sonic Frontiers instead.
You know what? Sounds great. That sounds like you're living your best life then.
All right, going into the news section of this podcast, there's a few headlines, a few trailers, and a lot of release dates for next year. We do have one article that I want to shout out. This is something that we kind of alluded to last week, and that is that we finally have an official review up on the site for Star Ocean: The Divine Force. We've had Josh and James and me a little bit talk about our experience with Star Ocean: The Divine Force and how our impressions were actually surprisingly positive. Granted, our expectations were kind of just low for the series and the game in general, so it's one of those things where we kind of set the bar at a place and it got exceeded. On the site itself, over on rpgsite.net, Scott White was able to put up his review for Star Ocean: The Divine Force, and he thought the game had a lot of the same strengths that we did, and I think it did kind of surprise him in a few ways, though he did more very candidly talk about some of the shortcomings that the game had from his point of view. So we do have that up on the site, and I'm not sure if Scott is slated to join us at the end of the year podcast yet or not. Some of those details are still being worked out, but it'll be interesting to hear him in person elucidate on his thoughts on Star Ocean: The Divine Force, and maybe kind of compare and contrast his thoughts with ours in the upcoming month. But we do have that written review up on the site. I think the code was really late for that game, and I know it's been kind of frustrating where sometimes the publisher are like, hey, where's your review, guys? And it's like, you gave us 2 days or whatever. But no, Scott took his time with the game and kind of gave it his full attention and put up a really thorough review up on the site for that, if you wanted to go ahead and give that a listen. If you want to hear our impressions of the game, I believe the last couple of podcasts, 275 and 76, I believe the timestamps will have it. We'll have our verbal impressions on the game as well. As for main news topics, nothing major here, though we do have one game announcement, though I don't know if anyone here has a lot of look-in for this series, and that is that we got a new announcement of a new Sword Art Online RPG, and that is Sword Art Online Last Recollection is coming out next year for basically all PlayStation and Xbox consoles and PC. This is an RPG that takes place during the franchise's Alicization War of the Underworld arc.
Yeah, obviously.
Is anyone here? Yeah, I was gonna say like you're kind of leading into where I'm leading to. Is anyone here up on Sword Art Online enough to kind of know?
I
what
know
this
that this
is?
is Sword Art Online, but the one thing I understand about Alicization is that it's technically not even like in an actual game; it's all hallucination.
No,
I
it's
stopped following after.
it's so okay. Unfortunately, like I watched this a series and like know like what this arc is. It's not really a hallucination. It's very much like a VR simulation, and the best way I can describe it is that it is all like to train up an AI named Alice. Like the government wants to use it for militarization purposes, and it all takes place on like an island platform in the middle of the ocean. I don't want to get into it. It's a long story. Long story short, this is kind of like a follow up of Alicization Licorice or from
Like Horus or whatever.
like Horus or 2 years ago. So it is like during like another new arc, but like with an original protagonist. I did play a little bit of Alicization Licorice. I didn't complete it, but because I got bored of it after like 20 to 30 hours in. But I had friends a few months ago that like got really super way into it, so I had got to hear more about like the more of like the end game stuff like that because they got super into it for some reason. They like really liked the gameplay and thought the story was like garbage, but they really liked the gameplay.
As far as I understand it, so like of the Sword Art Online arcs, there's a big arc called Alicization, and it's basically big enough where it's kind of split into like parts.
Yes.
So like the previous game, which came out a couple of years ago, that Josh is talking about, that one was like Alicization Lycoris. That was like the first part. Excuse me.
Yeah, that was like part one, and then War of the Underworld's like part
and then War of the
two.
Underworld is like the second part.
Yeah.
So this is like the second part.
Yeah. I don't want to get into like the story details of like the actual what happens because it's like a lot and it's stupid. That's the best way I can like sum it. It's like it's very stupid. The thing that stings about this news of the last Recollection is there was a trademark for last Recollection a few months back that I believe Gamatsu reported on. And like we were speculating maybe it's a U.hack thing because they named the previous like GU collection.
Oh, I didn't even think about
last
that.
Recode. I'm like, oh shit, maybe it's time. Like last Recollection would be like a nice subtitle for like whatever the remaster or maybe potential remake of the IMOQ, the IMOC .hack quadrilogy or tetralogy. Is.
I didn't even think about that. It even burns even more, I guess, for .hack fans because like Sword Art Online is often considered like a bad version of .hack or whatever.
Yeah, the thing that pretty replaced it. Yeah. So it's just like, yeah. So this news was just like I saw it. I'm like, I don't like anything anymore.
I had completely forgot that people thought that Last Recollection was a .hack thing until now. Man, that fucking sucks.
It's actually Sword Art. That's like the worst case scenario.
It could have been anything else. It would have been like.
It would have been disappointing. Like, oh, it wasn't hack. It was just something random. Like, no, it wasn't hack, but it was actually Sword Art. That's like
if it was like Dragon Ball Z Last Regular or One Piece Last Regular, it's like okay, whatever. But no.
Like that Xenosaga, the last Recollection. Okay.
It can have been that. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so I mean, this is like your typical like actual details of this game is like your typical game announcement of an SAO game of like just reintroducing Kirito and his friends, New Girl. What was New Girl's name in this one? Dorothy. Yeah.
But they have to worry about dying anymore.
Not since the first
arc. Not in this one, but there's other stakes in place. So even if you die, so actually this is actually really funny. This arc in like I guess I only watched the anime and this arc is actually really surprisingly brutal in the show. The way they like there's actually like fucking people getting fucking sliced and mauled and like there's like a lot of blood and gore in like some of the fights in this arc. So obviously that's probably not going to be like depicted in the game itself, but the people just fucking get murked, and it's like visually very graphic and sometimes very disturbing. But yeah, War of the Underworld.
I remember like Horus. The one thing about that game is that I think it was meatier than a lot of people expected. I remember people playing it and think, oh, it took me like 70 hours, 80 hours to beat this. Plus, Bandai Namco like supported it with like tons of DLC for a while. So I know we kind of just sat here for a while, just not quite poo-pooing on Sword Art Online. But if this is a IP that you're really into, Bandai Namco's on a track record where they'll probably support this game for a while. So it'll come out at some point next year, but.
Alicization Lycoris got a fuckload of DLC. And then it got a Switch port. Yeah, and it got a Switch port. Like, yeah, you're probably doing well if you like that game. I already started to meme this game to like my friends who played Alicization Lycoris a few months back, and they're like, maybe. I'm like, God damn it. So it's just, yeah. I don't know, man. It's an SAO game. It's hard for me to be like, yay! It's coming out on everything at least. Except Switch, not Switch.
That'll come 2 years later.
Yeah,
which is what Bandai Namco does now, I guess.
So weird. Have you heard like any performance of like what the Switch version was of the?
Just to be clear, when Alicization Lycoris is coming out, I'm the reviews editor for the site. I'm like, does anyone want to review this? And no one wanted to review it. And then when the Switch version came out, it's like, does anyone want to review this? And no one wanted to review it. So we never reviewed this game.
I can't.
Which is valid.
Yeah, I mean,
the games are
I
long.
even gave that game a shot, and I was like, it's so funny because the first like 15 to 20 hours that I played, you can just skip that part now, and because they added that as a post-launch thing of like, because the first 15 to 20 hours of that game was like reliving like the events of like the first part of Alicization. So like when Kirito wakes up in the VR world, he doesn't have any of his memories, so you kind of meet like the new characters in that arc, and like they train for like a night academy to eventually go kill like the administrator of that world. And you can just like skip through that because like the divergence of the story is everything that comes after it. So it's just okay. And to me that was like the most interesting part. Because like, oh yeah, I watched this and I didn't like hate all of it. So it was kind of interesting to see. It's just, I don't know.
But yeah, I have no idea how the Switch port turned out.
The only recent SAO thing that has amused me is I forgot what the Twitter handle is, but there's a Twitter account that like is role playing like the events of like of SAO, like the actual like VR MMO coming out as if it was real, because like I guess in real world events time, like that MMO launched at like November 2022 in world. So they were like they're role playing like, oh man, who's picking up the SAO? I'm so excited for it. And obviously infamously, the main story setup of that initial arc is like, oh, you're trapped in the game, and if you die in it, you die in real life, etc. So
when did that original light novel come out? Like 2010 or so?
I don't know.
Original SAO light novel.
That's a dangerous Google search.
Yeah, I don't dare do that.
2009.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So they that's where they thought we'd be in 2022.
Who's your favorite SAO character, Brian?
The redhead guy, because he's the only one not quite in the harem, but he sticks around. But I don't remember his name.
He's still in the harem.
There is one character I want to say. My friends have a very disgusting nickname for her, but I don't want to say it. I will get in trouble.
You can't just like say that and then not say. I understand like you probably don't want to say it for like good reason, but you can't just mention that and then not say it now. Damn it! I don't want
to know that Chow does have a favorite and has a name for it.
You'll know who she is.
Oh, okay. I you know what? Sadly, okay.
That's actually probably the only good character in the show.
Yeah,
to be honest.
yeah. Okay, Chow.
So he mentioned in the chat the character name. I'm gonna just say it. AIDS. Mm-hmm. There's a character in the game or in the show that has basically an anime illness, which is effectively AIDS. But she's actually probably the best character in the show. Just like the only good character in the show.
It's also the arc where like Kirito is like not the protagonist of it.
But yeah, that's also one reason.
Only good time when the show is good. Kirito's not the main focus. Hey, they have these movies in Asno's point of view. If people are still interested in SAO,
no.
If you are interested in covering SAO games, just pitch Alexander Donaldson, and maybe you can be on the site, because we have tried and it has fallen through the cracks so far. Now, we do have the next news article that we have here is about upcoming RPGs being released on Nintendo Switch day and date. And this is going to Nihon Falcom and the Trails/East series. So I'm going to hand this off over to James. He's the one that wrote up this news article, and I don't quite know exactly what it comprises, but it's about their, is it CEO Kondo? Is that his title?
Yeah, it's the head of Falcom, Kondo.
Yeah, I forget if he's like chairman or CEO, but talking about future of their IPs and specifically releasing games on Switch, day and date with the launch of their games, rather than having Clouded Leopard do it for the Asian market or having NIS do it for the Western markets. So, James, what did this come out from Japan about the upcoming East 10, about plans to release on Switch? There's a lot here, and I want to make sure it gets unpacked correctly.
There was a bit of an earnings release, and they had a PDF that just went over some of the stuff that they're planning to do, like in the near future, and also like listing what they still consider to be like important titles that are still selling and whatnot. Um,
To be clear, Falcom's fiscal year ends at the end of September. They're kind of opposite from a lot of Japanese companies. So this was basically like, here's how we did in the last fiscal year, and here's what we're doing for the next one. So it's kind of what it came from.
Yeah. So the main thing that this comes from is slide number, I think it's slide number 17. And basically it says that they are making the next entry in the E series for PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. And for Nintendo Switch games that they're developing internally, they're planning to release 3 titles on Switch by the end of their next fiscal year, which means that East 10 and 2 other Switch games will be coming from Falcom next year. Since East 10 is coming day and date on Switch, it makes sense for me. And again, this isn't confirmed by them or anything, but I feel like a lot of people are kind of reading between the lines that those other 2 titles are probably going to be Kuro 1 and 2. Because like even a few months back, I translated Famitsu's like interview of him where he said that they were looking into getting Kuro 1 and 2 on Switch. So if they're trying to target multi-platform day and date and they want to get Kuro 3 day and date on Switch, it would make sense that they'd want to get 1 and 2 on Switch next fiscal year. That way, when Kuro 3 comes out in 2024, there will be enough of a gap where it's not like oversaturating the market and whatnot.
Now remind me, like Trails from Zero is now on Switch in the West. Did that ever come out for Switch in Japan?
I think that there was a, I believe there was a Clouded Leopard Japanese Switch release.
Yeah, I just want to also mention, like, obviously, like everything that like we're talking about, it's like just for the Japanese market for now.
Yeah.
So for people, I don't want people to take it the wrong way. It's like, oh, you mean right here? It's like, no, in Japan, for now. So it's there's a very traditionally and historically very Falcom move. It's like, okay, like they kind of really realize it a bit, maybe a bit late, that like, oh, the most popular platform now in Japan is the Switch. It's time to kind of start these processes of getting our games onto Switch, and they've been releasing them, but they haven't really been internally developing them until just recently. Obviously, with the Nayuta
At Astra, yeah,
yeah, that released a few months ago over there. So it's obviously a smart move. Hopefully, they'll find some success in. It's always been weird, right? Like they've been, like, for a good amount of years now, they always had like the PlayStation versions come out, and then the Switch version, and then the inevitable PC version just come out like way later. So now they're just trying to like line it up and like, hey, we want like that initial influx of sales with the Switch version, especially when they strategically release their games at the end of September very reliably. Like the East 10 like is most likely 90% going to be released at the end of September, because that's just the way they operate, and because of that, it lines up nice with their
fiscal year.
Yep. So
now remind me, Kuro 1 and 2 did make their way. Are those both on PC in Japan?
1 is on PC. 2 will probably be on PC sometime next year.
Are those PC versions actually in Japanese, or are they in Chinese?
They're Korean and Chinese only. That's why I assume that NIS America already has license, because otherwise those PC releases would probably have Japanese support. Because the way that Nayuta's worked is that technically NIS America has already released Nayuta on PC, but it's only in Japanese right now. So it's a very weird situation.
And it'll be updated middle of next year with the English text support. Yeah, so if this is just one of the small steps to try to standardize the Falcom releases, so you don't have this weird console platform language staggering. I know it's probably frustrating for the people who cover the news on the site, like James, Adam, and Josh, you always have to keep up to date on, we got a new platform announced for one of these games, or we got the Western release date, we got the port release date for this. I bet if you search like East 9 or East 8 on the site release date, you can find like 6 different news articles as that game like filters out, and still is happening like when East 9 got its official PS5 release or whatever.
Well, East 9 released on PS4 and then Switch and then PS4, then like PC, then yeah, they're all staggered. It's kind of
I'm
But
just saying,
it even comes to the point where East America like copied and pasted Vita as a platform for East 9, even though it didn't come out on on Vita.
It'll just be nice to have it come out all at once. Be like, it's there, right here, all at once.
hell, even all at once on Japanese and all at once in English, and then maybe a PC port. That would be less headlines than what it normally is, where it's staggered to hell and back. Where exactly has this game released? Is Zero on Switch? We think so. In Japanese, I think so.
The thing to look forward to out of this news is like, hey, we're probably gonna get East 10 like first screenshots and maybe a trailer before the end of the year, because Falcom will have their what's it like, their financial.
Yeah, they have their like shareholder meeting in December. So
yeah.
And they've talked about their ambitions with East 10 and how they, the last 3 games have been kind of samesies, and got some really good games out of it, especially in my opinion 8. But it'd be interesting to see like what the direction East takes into its 10th entry will be, if it's going to look similar, if it'll look significantly different.
Yeah, this will be on their new engine as well that they've been using for Kuro. So seeing how that will translate, we probably got a small glimpse of it with how Kuro's action combat is, but obviously East is much more faster paced and much more tuned for it.
So I haven't gotten back to Kuro 2, and I'll probably, with all the RPGs coming out, I'm probably gonna have to wait until next year to really dig in. From what I've heard about how Kuro 2 performs on PS5, I am kind of worried about East 10.
I didn't actually think about that, because obviously I was watching my friend play it, so I didn't really think about performance. But have you heard about that?
It has a lot of frame rate dips. That especially later on, which is a shame, because from what I understand, the PS5 version of Kuro 1 was like a locked 4K 60. So it's like, yeah.
Well, I'll play the PC version of East 10 when it comes out in 2026. Let's go.
A couple other minor updates here before we go into trailers and release dates. Here is an announcement that is very, very early, but was spotted on a Korean news site and then picked up by some English-facing sites like Eurogamer, and that is that it looks like PC publisher NCSoft might be partnering with Sony to develop an MMO or an MMO-like game in the Horizon franchise. So like a Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West MMO in development, potentially. This is kind of basically reading between the lines and gleaning what NCSoft might have in store. NCSoft has published a handful of games, mostly like Lineage and Guild Wars 2, for the Western audience. And I don't know, kind of reporting on it here. And I don't know if there's a lot of excitement for a Horizon MMO.
I don't think that's what people want out of Horizon.
A lot of people like Horizon's either they like Horizon's story or its combat, and I don't think its combat would transfer to an MMO. And then if it's not the story that's in the games, then what is it? Is it going to be about the world? I don't think the world is that compelling.
Yeah, so that's kind of if this ever comes to fruition, I have no idea what the hell this would take, because I feel like what people like Horizon for is in direct opposition to what an MMO should.
They like Aloy,
they like it being a single player story about this, Aloy and what she goes through, and then I don't know if the world of Horizon is compelling enough to be a full blown MMO. I have no idea what the fuck you would do in it.
And by the way, the language in this report is that they have tentatively agreed to pursue a business partnership in which NCSoft will create new games using Sony's game IP. So this is
all right.
Is there anything that indicates that it's Horizon, or is it just Sony IP? I was making a joke, but they say Sony IP. I'm like, maybe it's a God of War MMO. I'm joking.
Days Gone MMO.
Well, I was just trying to drill back between Eurogamer. I think was the first English publication to pick up on this, and then there's MTN is the original Korean news source, just trying to feed that through a translator. So a lot of this is very early, just getting the financial foundation in place for getting the project started. So whatever this ends up being, we are very, very far away from it. And there's a lot of speculation on what it even is. It could be some other sort of online project for as far as we know.
I just realized how broken my brain is because when you mentioned like it was reported by Korean news game site MTN, I was thinking of like MTN. Like my first thought was like that's a weird like abbreviation for machine translation instead of mountain. I thought of machine translation first when I saw MTN instead of mountain. I'm like, oh fuck. It's really coming.
Yeah.
Into this now,
To answer Adam's joke, the MTN uses both. They both specify the IP as Horizon and the game type as MMORPG. So that's directly from MTN and their sources. So where this exactly came from, like where MTN is sourcing it from, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe more details about specifically where this information is coming from will come to light. Or if you can just dig in, I bet you could find it. But I guess they're also planning on making Horizon's one of those weird games where we cover it. Forbidden West came out earlier this year, and we did we wrote a review on that, right? And I mean the RPG site that got covered.
I played it.
I mean, they're good games, but I don't really treat them like as something that leaves a mark for me. That's how I look at them.
There's a VR game.
Oh yeah, that's right. They're coming out with like a PSVR 2 Horizon game.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Follow the Mountain or something.
It's kind of strange how like time works. Where that sounds like really more deep than I intended. But Horizon came out around the same time as Elden Ring, right? That was the big thing. Where it's like Elden Ring doesn't feel like that long ago, but Forbidden West, oh wow, that came out this year. I don't know. Just one of those obviously made a much stronger impression on me than the other thing.
I keep forgetting that Forbidden West even exists.
Oof.
I mean, it did suffer the curse of being
Horizon. Apparently.
No, it came out right after Elden Ring, which repeated, the
Right
previous
before Elden
Horizon.
Ring, right?
Yeah, and then Horizon 1 is like right after Breath of the Wild, so just like it just keeps happening.
So we'll follow up on this, I guess, when we get more news, but I'm not expecting that we'll see that anytime soon. It is kind of interesting, though, like apparently this game will be coming out on Sony consoles and PC, so it does kind of at least push forward, Sony is a multi-platform publisher now in ways that they at least get their games on PC, maybe not day one, but a few years ago that would have been unthinkable, and now you can go to Steam sometimes and see like their Sony publisher sale and go pick up Spider-Man or God of War. So
Uncharted came out not too long ago.
Yeah, so Sony just currently, we don't talk about Sony a lot because they don't release a lot of games in our space, and when they do, they're like super fringe, quote unquote, RPGs like Horizon that we end up forgetting about.
Yeah, some people actually got mad at us for saying Horizon's an RPG. It's like,
But well, I mean, are there people that were mad at us for not covering Gods of War?
That's true.
Man. There's a time. I mean, behind the scenes, there like the first the God of War reboot 2018. There was a time where like maybe we should go cover that. Like I don't know. You don't know.
People. I remember back then people asked us, "Where's your review for God of War?" And we're like,
"Good question. Where is?"
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, like obviously, the Sony of 15, 20 years ago had like Legend of Dragoon and Dark Cloud and things like that. So, there's a lot of those IPs waiting in the wings that we would love to cover. But until that happens, we've got Horizon. And then the last piece of news is that in case the release schedule wasn't hectic enough, in this last week we got the PC release of Valkyrie Elysium, which my voice just cracked there. I'm sorry, but like that's just another game where it's like, oh yeah, I want to get to that eventually, but when am I going to have time? I was waiting for the PC release, and now here it is. But alongside the PC release, we also got the first major like content update for the game, which is the Hilde's Vengeance gameplay route where you play as the other Valkyrie, and then the Seraphic Gate like challenge mode, which are included in the PC version by default and are add-ons for the existing PlayStation version of the game.
Love how you said first major update when we don't know if they'll get any more updates beyond this.
That's a good point. Yeah. I guess I'm so used to speaking in that language now where games are just iterated on after they release that you just kind of assume that
Yeah.
there's going to be, not assume, but you end up catching yourself speaking in that way where it's like, oh, they might come out with more stuff for this game and staple it on. I don't know. But I think we're still at the point where I believe Josh is still the only person that's played Valkyrie Elysium. And obviously we got the back in September when it released, his thoughts on that game.
Maybe I'll find once I find time to maybe check out the new content in that game because I think it's fun enough to revisit.
It's time
look
for
a
us to
little
stop
bit.
covering the Square Enix titles. Remember,
All right, into like some of the smaller news. We got a handful of trailers here to talk about. This first one here is kind of one we were expecting. We talked in the last 2 weeks about these Square Enix deep dive trailers for Forspoken, which is coming out next January. This is basically gameplay focused trailers where they go into just the systems of the games and basically answering the question, what do you do in this game? The first one was about traversal, and the second one was mostly about combat. This third trailer for this third deep dive for Forspoken is called Exploring Athia, and it's just basically Adam kind of put it this way. It's saying, yeah, this is an open world game. It talks about some of the things that you can find on the map, some of the challenges you can do, the labyrinths that you can kind of go. There's like skill challenges that improve your abilities, and it talks about like shops and other things. It basically just answers the question: when you're not fighting and when you're not traversing the map, what do you do in this
Riding
game?
on rails, exploring open zones.
and looking for a cat.
Looking what?
Looking for a cat.
Oh yeah, there's some sort of creature aspect as well, and I don't know. Like it talks about photo mode, it talks about these labyrinths, it talks about these skill trees and how you improve your abilities. There's like these challenges that you can access from the map to basically just level up and improve your abilities. It's one of those things where I don't think any individual component here sounds inherently like, oh wow, that's a marquee aspect of the game right there. But it does seem like I'm being charitable here. It seems like there's plenty to do. Like I can see it playing this game, and at least if they're presenting it faithfully, that I won't be bored. It sounds like that they've gotten plenty of ways to incorporate the gameplay and progression systems, and it's got enough going on here. It's probably the weakest of the deep dives, I think, but it probably has also just the least interesting subject matter to cover. It's like all the little tertiary stuff in between the story and the combat, all the other things you can do in the game, puzzles and things like that.
So there's like challenges where it's like literally, I assume there's going to be like traversal races, and then like combat challenges and finding these little cat things. I guess you have to chase them and collect them. What the sounds like. So there is one shot of this trailer where it shows like the world map and it has like icons dotted on it, and I don't know. I have like an instinctive like reflex, just like, oh, icons on the map. I don't know. It's an open world game for sure.
Just world map PTSD, but it seems I don't know, feature filled. It seems like there's plenty to do. We also got a new trailer for the upcoming One Piece Odyssey, and probably not a surprise after they talked about the memory sequence where you go back into the Alabasta arc and relive those events. Not surprised that it seems like there'll be more than just that in this game. We've got a new trailer showing the Water 7 arc of One Piece Odyssey. So yeah, while One Piece Odyssey was originally marketed and is still claimed to be primarily a standalone, basically non-canon quote unquote experience, it's for fans of the IP, it's still incorporating in this memory sequence way some of the early arcs from the show. And we had the Alabasta arc last month, and this month we got a new trailer for the Water 7 arc.
This game has lost me with all these things.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't even know what a Water 7 is. When I think of Water 7, I think of like 7 glasses of water in front of me.
Adam, you're the One Piece expert. What is Water 7?
Basically, just there are arcs in between Alabasta and Water 7, but those are like bigger ones. So it's like they're just picking like the bigger popular like parts of the show or the manga to basically revisit the place. It's like
Water 7 is the big you are our Nakama one, right?
The what? Oh yeah, it is.
with Robin.
Yeah.
And that they say like you can't translate that in English. It's not possible.
Why did they just like stick with the island and show cool island stuff and be like, yeah, I understand about going around an island, getting your powers back.
I kind of said this when they did the Alabasta thing, where it's just like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, which I don't think is. I'm not disparaging them for that. It's like we want to tell a One Piece story. We don't want to have the baggage of like, oh, only for people who know what this is. But at the same time, we want to like have the nostalgia bait. Like you remember Water 7, right? You remember Alabasta. You remember Enos Lobby, or I don't like. I think that's where I dropped off the show.
Maybe instead of reading or watching the show, maybe I should just consume it like this. Be like,
exactly. Water 7. I got introduced to this with the Odyssey
expert
RPG.
on this now.
Well, Bandai Namco Europe actually has put like posts like things on their blog about like here's everything you need to know about Alabasta, and here's everything you need to know about Water 7, so you can read like their summary.
You've got homework.
Yeah, do your homework, Josh.
Or who are we making review this? Didn't we decide that Chow had to review this? Oh, Josh.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Not Josh.
Yeah, you know me. That's how I would open up my One Piece reviews. Like, yeah, you know me, biggest One Piece fan on the planet. You know, love the character, the Nico.
Nico's my favorite character. Yep. I love the main character, Monkey. He's my favorite dude.
Yep. I just like if you can put like monkey emojis in the CMS, I would do that.
But yep. So, in case you forgot, this is probably one of the earliest RPGs releasing next year. It's in early January, coming out on the 13th. Mm-hmm. Two very small trailers here. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, obviously coming out next week. We got another one of these little quick 1-minute Pokemon introductions, and this is for Gimmighoul, which is basically like a treasure mimic Pokemon. The most interesting thing about this is that it kind of like got data mined out of Pokemon Go before it actually got officially announced. Okay. So people got, they got to look in it ahead of time, a day or so before the Pokemon YouTube channel uploaded the actual trailer for it. I think that's really the most important thing here. He's like a little bug guy with a coin on his back that lives in a treasure
one
chest.
might say that people have been getting better looks into the game before.
It's out there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you want to know what's coming out in Scarlet and Violet, you know where to find it, I suppose.
Yeah, just log into the internet and you will see it.
And then we also got another gameplay trailer for the upcoming Disgaea 7. Still no official announcement of an English localization, and this trailer is pretty long. It's like 6.5 minutes, showcasing
this
a bit
trailer
of everything.
Is basically just the trailer version of the written image and text version that they released like last week. Like here's all the characters and some of the story and some of the classes and everything. The mode where you turn into a giant kaiju. Basically, it's that
in trailer form. Mm-hmm. So we have that up on the site, and coming out also in January in Japanese. We don't know about the English release. Nothing's been announced formally just yet on that. All right, we have a couple of headlines here that are like sales or business focused. The more straightforward one is that we just got Nintendo quarterly results for some of their sales updates. That's where Adam got the 8 million number for Splatoon, I believe, and that's the fastest selling game in that series. And on the RPG front, the most interesting thing here is that obviously their big RPG of the year, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, we got a milestone that it has shipped 1.72 million units. And to put that in context, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in the first few months of sale sold 1.31. So basically this game sold just about 500,000 more in roughly the same amount of time, which obviously for
actually quite a bit less time if you really count it. I think that comparison I made, it's like Xenoblade 3 had like 9 weeks and Xenoblade 2 had like 17 weeks.
So basically in a shorter period of time, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 still sold 400,000 more units than Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which previously had been kind of like the high water mark. The definitive edition sold about the same as Xenoblade Chronicles 2, a little less. Long story short, this is looking really promising for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It's got a lot of momentum. It's selling more with each entry. So just good to see that the game has seemingly done well.
Yeah, so every year in Japan, there's like an organization called CISA, which is like Consumer Electronics something. It's CESA, and they release what they call like a white paper, and they basically reveal like shipments for various companies, and Nintendo's one of them. And based on that, which they released last year, Xenoblade 2, its lifetime sales are like 2.4 million, I believe. So if we're looking at like, will Xenoblade 2 outsell will Xenoblade 3 outsell Xenoblade 2 eventually? It's like, well, it's more than halfway there. We'll see what sort of legs it has. But
yeah,
I
but
believe,
there's also that, like, taking into account as well, like there's still the holiday season still hasn't come
right.
for that, and then also the big Torna style DLC
Mm-hmm.
to come out as well. So I think it can
And
surpass.
there's also the consideration to make that Xenoblade 2 came out 5 years ago, like when the Switch install base was a lot smaller. And like, I know some people are like, well, I actually expected it to be even more than that. Well, we'll see. They released at very different times also.
Yeah.
Xenoblade 2 released in December. This released in July. So that probably affects it a bit. So.
And also,
We'll
just,
see.
it's tough. Like the ongoing story with like any sequel is like the more sequels you have, the less it'll sell as more sequels. Each subsequent sequel.
Yeah, sequels usually do worse than the original, like no matter what, because usually it's because they bought the original and they didn't like it, or they just didn't finish it. And I know Xenoblade is a little bit different because the original was on a different platform and then it got like re-released twice, so it's a little tricky.
It also helps that, like, the word of mouth of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, 1 was good, and 2, like, I think there were quite a lot of newcomers to Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as their first Xenoblade. So and the game is still fine, like, for a person who hasn't played previous.
Yeah, it helps that it's a sequel, but it's also like only loosely connected. Like, it is definitely connected, but it's not like the same characters, like that you don't know anything about them because it's a new cast and all that. So
I think just this
probably help.
This trilogy in general, I think, does a really good job of, you can earnestly say people can jump in at Xenoblade 1, 2, or 3, but at the same time, there is a lot for fans to pick up on between the games as well. I don't know. I just think that the Monolith has found a really good balance of keeping the games tethered together, but not feeling like people are like, well, I can't jump into 3. I've not played 1 or 2. It's like, no, you can jump into 3. It's really good.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of interesting that that's our headline, but the second bullet, I just think that this is just the power of Pokemon. We obviously, a game that released in January this year, Pokemon Legends Arceus. In the last quarter, since April 2022, it has sold another 1.3 million units, and now its total is just a shy under 14 million. And I just kind of enjoy how that is our second bullet, and it's an order of magnitude more than Xenoblade. It sold nearly as much in the same window, 1.3 million. And that's just Pokemon.
To be clear, that 1.3 million is from last April, so that's like within 6
right.
months.
And Xenoblade, and then Xenoblade was only since July because that's when it released. But just the fact that we're talking 14 million for Pokemon, and can Xenoblade 3 reach 2 million? Just the scales of between the different IPs.
And
if anything, it shows the strength of the new direction of Arceus. Arceus is very, very, very different from any other Pokemon for it. So them largely coming out ahead still with that just shows that they can get away with some experimentation, not totally tank.
Also, just in this fiscal year, which started in April, just Breath of the Wild sold like another. I don't have it in front of me, but like more than 1 million. Just another cool million on top of the 26 million it already has. No big deal.
Yeah, it'll sell a lot more before Tears of the Kingdom is about to release as well, or when it comes out next year as well. So that'll just keep on rising as well. I don't know how it does it though. Like I was like thinking, like, man, there's still a lot of people just decided just to pick it up. Huh? All right.
And our next financial headline is going back to Square Enix. They also gave some of their financial results and plans for the next fiscal year. And I'm going to hand this off to Adam because to go through this data required, I guess, a little bit of just digging and compartmentalizing all the different things that they talked about here. So some of it is talking about their just income for the year, and also their plans for, unfortunately, NFT and blockchain aspirations and things like that. So there's a lot packed into this article that you and Alex put up, Adam. I don't know, like, just like similar to the Falcom news from earlier. I just don't know, like, the best way to unpack what you and Alex dug through here.
Okay, so this is another quarterly report. We get a lot of those this is for the quarter ending in September. And Square Enix's last quarterly report, which is what ended in June, they didn't really say a lot except that sales were way down. For the last several Square Enix reports, the broad picture has been the sales of our games are down, except for Final Fantasy XIV. That's doing okay. That's actually helping. That's actually like keeping us afloat in a way. Probably not that dramatic, but Final Fantasy XIV is doing totally fine, more than fine. But this quarterly report, it's they also say that their sales are down of their games, and this is games as of that release before September. So that's like Live Alive and Dio Field, and that only counts Live Alive, I think, in Japan because it was Nintendo published in the West. That's always weird. So nothing to do with like Harvestella or Star Ocean or any of that yet, because that's going to be the next quarter. But they also put in they also have their medium term plan. A lot of companies have what they call medium term plans or something close to that, which is basically like not just talking about this fiscal year, but the next couple of fiscal years. What are our goals? And a lot of companies like chunk this into like 3-year chunks. And Square Enix offered an update on their current medium-term plan, and they basically have 2 priorities. One is just kind of strengthen our IP is what they say. So that can mean a lot of different things, but probably involves like focusing on like Valkyrie and Star Ocean and like let's bring back these IP that we have and people like, and that's kind of like one of their focuses for their medium-term plan. But to be honest, it is a little bit vague what exactly strengthen our IP means. But then the second point, it's like explore new avenues or something like that is the wording they use. But what they really mean is blockchain. And on this report, they have like 6 slides just talking about all the different blockchain investments they've made. Also cloud. The cloud stuff is funny because I feel like Square Enix is invested in like 9 different cloud platforms. But they basically
cloud gaming, not Cloud Strife, the protagonist.
Correct, cloud gaming. Did anyone remember like Shinra Tech or whatever? They named it after Shinra.
Oh, yeah.
And then a few others. There was a few others that they had too that they launched and then shut down immediately for cloud stuff. But yeah, they talk about like we've already invested in these 2 blockchain tech groups, and then like we've now invested into 3 more, and they have a lot of verbiage on just like we're investing into it, we're interested in it, and blah 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 blah. And it seems to be a really big focus for them. In the piece that Alex and I put up, everyone probably remembers the New Year's letter from this.
I was just thinking of that
several months ago, where it was literally like the second sentence in the letter. It was like,
they're like I hope
everybody.
God, yeah.
Blockchain is blah 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 or whatever it was.
I tried to forget.
And then also, so Square Enix, a lot of companies around this time, they also put out like the annual report, or sometimes they call it like the integral report of the previous year. And Square Enix did that also. And in this big report, which is kind of separate from the financials, they also have a big section on blockchain, and they quite literally say, let me pull up the quote here, what they say about the blockchain. So this is from the annual report. They say, we have identified AI, the cloud, and blockchain as focused investment areas under our medium-term earnings target and business strategy. This is the key quote right here. At present, we are positioning the blockchain domain as our most important focus and approaching our investment and business development initiatives accordingly. So their most important focus is blockchain. They literally say that verbatim, right there.
It's like one of those things where, like, if a publisher as big as Square Enix wanted to keep feelers out and just make sure they're staying up to date with, the tech and having their investments in place, like, sure, but they're just diving into the deep end. They're just like, yep, this is our future for this moment. This is it.
Oh, they've been keeping up. They know it crashes hard, so maybe they should learn what it really means. No fucking thanks.
I forgot. Was this report before or after the unveil of Symbiogenesis was?
It was, I think the report was like just before it. It was roughly at the same time. But yeah, I don't think we've actually talked about this on the podcast yet. And we do mention this in the article. So there was a trademark for Symbiogenesis, which now that I played Parasite Eve, I talked about it a couple podcasts ago. I know, hey, that's a Parasite Eve thing. And obviously, people's speculations went into overdrive. Like,
they're going to strengthen their IP. They're gonna Parasite Eve. They just said they're going to do that.
And I saw some people wondering, like, maybe this is just like for like a mobile thing, or like a costume in some other game, or just some reference somewhere, or maybe even merch or something. Like, people's expectations are already sort of low. I know some people had like massive expectations, but I think most people were being reasonable. Like, it's just going to be a small thing. It's not going to be like a remake or whatever. And then even those low expectations were not met, because it's like, actually, it is an NFT thing. So, and I know blockchain is more than just NFTs, but still, that's what it was, and that's where they're going.
Does anyone remember that Million Offer video game? That's like
Million Offer was their first NFT project, and apparently NFTs
all the coins are sold out. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, it's like, okay, look, we tried making video games, and look at DioFill sales and Neo sales. They're like less than like 10,000.
Are you telling me you're going to turn Dealfield and World Ends With You into NFTs?
And then they're like, oh, but look at our NFTs. They all sold out, but these games sold like garbage. And they said, we tried, but we didn't make anything. So it's
you're saying Star Ocean, Valkyrie, Harvestella, their futures NFTs.
Sadly, they're probably looking at, because sales are what really speaks to investors. Really, they don't care about it's like what's integrity or not. All they care about is profit.
Well, yeah, if their NFTs are selling out and their games are underperforming, yeah.
Chow, the good news here: everything you love and hold dear, they're NFTs now. They're blockchain.
Just don't buy them.
Also, there's another blockchain company in Singapore that this was like back in September that they announced a partnership with Square Enix. This is a little bit confusing because for some reason Square Enix doesn't mention this in their report. But according to this blockchain company, which is called like Oasis, they had a quote from Yosuke Saito, who is usually known as like the producer of the Nier series and a few other things. He's a Square Enix producer.
And the producer of Babylon's Fall, guys.
Yeah, but I think he's also the Babylon's Fall producer too. He's just like producer. That's his job. But also in this press release from this blockchain company, they labeled Yosuke Saito as director, Square Enix Blockchain Entertainment Division. Like, I guess that's another one of his titles now. And they actually have a blockchain entertainment division, again, according to this blockchain company. But it's like it seems like we have plenty of evidence to show that Square Enix they're not just, like Brian said, they're not just, keeping the door open or like, let's just keep an eye on it. They're like, we're diving in. So,
I mean, it definitely like sucks to hear, but when you see like the numbers on our financial report of like everything like pretty much being down except FF14, it's like you can kind of see why they're pivoting in this direction as well. It's like, I don't know, what else are you gonna do? If your main goal is to like try to keep the numbers up and up and up.
It'll be interesting to see the next financial report for next quarter, which will come out early next year, because that'll include like Star Ocean, Harvestella, Tactics Ogre. Like, is this sort of strategy of releasing all these mid-tier or like mid-budget games, is it working at all? We will see.
It probably
wasn't there like a context? Wasn't there like some context here where they talked about how their revenue was up, but they didn't? They kind of they hid the fact that that was primarily due to exchange rates rather than just performance.
So Square Enix's profits are up right now, but that is due to basically three things. One, the weakness of the yen is actually a good thing when a lot of their business is done without the yen. So that actually, it's called a foreign exchange gain. I'm not going to claim I may be an expert at this, but in a company in Square Enix position, it's actually a good thing. They're getting a lot of foreign exchange gains due to the weakness of the yen. Two, when they sold off Eidos and Crystal Dynamics, they're getting a lot of profit from those shares being sold. So again, I'm not like a finance expert, but that's a big chunk of their profits. They call it like profits attributed to parent company. Like, it's not sales revenue, it's just profits from selling those. And then three is, yes, Final Fantasy XIV is contributing to that, but I don't think that's the main factor. They actually, Square Enix like 2 years ago, they actually stopped reporting like how much income they make from like directly from like HD games. They they combined it all into one, where HD games, mobile games, and MMO, they kind of report that all as one income. And the reason why they did that is because when they were separate, you could see, oh, our MMO income is good, but our HD games income is actually oftentimes not an income at all. It's actually costing us money. So they literally just they're using their MMO and mobile game revenues to almost mask their HD games are not doing well. So they kind of just combine them all in one. Does that make sense? It's hard to show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they're not being deceitful, but they're taking the opportunity to frame it as charitably as they can. We're like, yeah, our profits are up, and Final Fantasy 14 is doing well. We're in a good space. But then
to be clear, it is a very common tactic when you're reporting financials. By the way, it's just this is the kind of like you kind of manipulate information. You don't falsely report it. You don't falsely report it, but you're controlling information to make it look presentable and like everything is good.
Mm-hmm.
But as someone who spends a fair amount of time looking at these reports, Square Enix, when they release like their really big games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, their HD game section does pretty good. But the thing is that they can't release that every year. It's all the other stuff in between those releases that just aren't doing well for them. Mm-hmm. So,
well, Adam, I do want to say just thank you for like really giving us a good detail of what came out of the quarterly report and the yearly report, and even like adding the information from like the report from the other blockchain company that has reported that they're working with Square Enix and things like that. You did just a good job detailing that all out and laying it out for us. And then the last kind of footnote of Square Enix news here is that apparently a new PlayStation ad for the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI has revealed that the exclusivity period for Final Fantasy XVI is 6 months. But I don't really know, like those exclusivity periods can be extended. We've kind of seen that before with Final Fantasy VII Remake, or they can just kind of end. We have things like Neo: The World Ends With You, where we end up getting it like on other platforms almost like randomly, where it just showed up on Steam or it showed up on Epic a few weeks late compared to the console release of that game. And then apparently Forspoken is PS5 exclusive on consoles for 2 years. This is the main headline here isn't specifically what the exclusivity period for Final Fantasy 16 is or for Forspoken is. It's just the same adage that we've said a few times on this podcast, is that for Square Enix, it's just almost random. It's not random because there's a business decision behind each, but Forspoken we know is coming out on PC day one. Final Fantasy 16, there has been evidence in some of the trailers that the game runs on PC and will release on PC. We just don't know when. And then we have other games that just
I don't think Final Fantasy 16 has been officially announced for PC at all.
It's
one of those things that we kind of assume. But
yeah, so Alex, this is what Alex put in the news post here. The initial reveal trailer had disclaimer text saying that it was running on a PC and also used the phrasing PlayStation console exclusive and also available on PC. But then the trailer was uploaded separately that nixed the disclaimer. So it's just people reading between the lines. And with Square Enix, like, you can't even point to history and say like, well, this is what they'll probably do, because it depends on what game you're looking at. Like Valkyrie Elysium had a weird like 3-month delay, and then other games like Tactics Ogre Reborn shows up on day one. And I know that's just a remaster, but for people who are really
one of these days, just Stranger of Paradise is just going to randomly show up on Steam. Like, here it is. And we're still waiting for Kingdom Hearts.
It's show up on Steam. It's going to sell like less than 1,000 copies with no marketing, and people are like, "Oh, what is going on?" Like, I don't know. But yeah, for people that are really into like the console, championing, it looks like Final Fantasy 16 is going to be exclusive to PS5. And hey, I bought a PS5 to play the Yuffie DLC, so I am not a for remake, so I'm not above that. But that looks like for Final Fantasy 16, Square Enix is getting the business deals they want with partnering with Sony, and then partnering potentially with Epic later, and double and triple dipping. So it's seemed to work for remakes. I'm not surprised that they're potentially doing the same thing here, but we won't really know until it releases and we see exactly what their plan is.
Yeah, I guess as a follow up to that, I think they were also saying that I guess Yoshida was giving interviews, and he was said that I guess they're announcing the release. I think this was last week, right? He said that they're going to announce the release date before the end of the year. I think that was last week.
Yeah, that was the headline last week. Is that within the next month or so we will have? Right now we just have for Final Fantasy 16 the summer window,
right?
But we'll have a date
There's like
soon.
weirdly drip feeding FF16 news. Like
Mhm.
it's always all.
Well, we got that big trailer like a month ago, and now it's just kind of this drip feed.
Yeah.
All right, to kind of wrap out, we still kind of have a bunch of headlines here, but most of these are just upcoming release dates for mostly smaller games. A lot of these kind of came out of the Nintendo Indie World report that just was shown, I think, in the last week, and a few other were just directly from the publisher. So I believe I've got these listed in chronological order. Luckily, these are all December or later, so these aren't anything that we have to immediately throw on our calendar for this year, but some of these are still coming out pretty darn soon. Chained Echoes. This is a classic-inspired JRPG that was originally on Kickstarter, I believe, in 2019. Chained Echoes will be releasing on December 8th for consoles and PC. This is being now published by Deck 13. We from the Nintendo Indie World report, we got a release month for Sports Story. It'll be releasing in December. I'm surprised that that's next month, but they haven't quite landed on a more specific date than that. This was originally supposed to release in 2020, but I just, pandemic and just
this one had like a
production
weird
delays.
delay where it was in like an Indie World in 2019, and then they said it was coming out in 2020. And I think they literally said like on the not like really an announcement, but the developer was just like, "Hey, we have to delay this, so sorry, it'll just be a while." And then it just kind of disappeared. And I know people liked Golf Story, this is a sequel to, and it kind of just disappeared for a while. And then finally, now it's back, coming out next month. We don't have a day, but
yeah, they just said during the Indie World
there.
Showcase, they said arriving in December for Sports Story. The English release of Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters is launching on January 24th, which, good thing nothing else is releasing in those early months.
I believe this is actually a slightly notable thing about this release date is that the PlayStation and Steam versions are releasing at the same time.
Yeah, that is not.
I think a lot of Neptunia games, it's like PlayStation first, and then Steam's like a month later. So at the same time,
hey, one less headline for you to write.
Correct.
Or for anyone doing the news on the site to write.
Neptunia fans are very happy.
Mm-hmm. Here's a big one. Another February release. That's for Tales of Symphonia Remastered is launching on February 17th. Good thing nothing else is launching in February. So Tales of Symphonia Remastered. I'm not sure we have a lot of genuine interest in this based on everything that we've learned about it since the announcement of that. This release date announcement was accompanied with like a little like Q&A from the production team. And it's just kind of interesting because they're using a lot of the same like marketing that the collection, what's the HD collection called? Is it just called Collection? Chronicles, that's the word. Or they're talking about like it has the mystic arts that were originally exclusive to the PS2 release and things like that and costumes and stuff. It's like, well, but that's not new. That's just like that's where I don't know.
It's basically the Steam version or the Chronicles version again, maybe like a slightly different like visual look. They like changed the colors a little bit.
Yeah, like contrast is a bit different.
That. Yeah,
the Q&A is actually really funny. I'm just skimming it right now. Like they had things like, "Will the game run in 60 FPS? Is this consistent for all platforms?" And they're like, "It is based on the Steam version that was running at 30 FPS." So, but however, this version has been optimized so fans can look forward to a more stable performance as they play the game. It's like, okay, just say no.
We actually had a comment on our Twitter that said that Q&A is a lot of words for them just to say, "This is the Steam version."
Yeah.
Well, and some of these questions are like, is the original English cast in this game? It's like, yeah, you think we redubbed it? I don't know. Like, not only does it offer Japanese, but it offers the English VO from the original release. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that was in question, but thanks for clarifying.
Does this include Dawn of the New World? It's like
no. They actually say, does it include Dawn of a New World?
Oh,
which is actually like not the title technically. If you want to be picky, because it's Dawn of the New World. Like they got the title wrong in their Q&A.
Nice.
The answer is no, it doesn't. So
Which is still
Actually, that
weird.
game's
Like,
okay.
yeah, like that
Why-
version is still the last release of Dawn of the New World is still like that PS3 version that was bundled.
Yeah, it never came to Steam, and it's not coming to these platforms either.
Yeah, it's like what the fuck?
This is basically what Josh said in a nutshell. Why is there not a PC version of Tales of Symphonia Remastered? Tales of Symphonia is already available for your purchase on PC via Steam, which comes complete with all the in-game content found in Tales of Symphonia Remastered. Our goal is to bring this nostalgic RPG back to modern platforms. So we've been taking the piss on this. It's unfortunate that this remastered it's a port to modern consoles, but I still think Symphonia is a good game, and nostalgia is clouding my judgment because it was the first Tales game I played, because I was a normie that played it on GameCube when Nintendo did their big publishing push for it back in the early 2000s. So
Hey, but the
I
GameCube
do
version
like-
is the only version that is 60 frames per second.
Jesus
Yep.
Christ, dude.
Or I mean, you can mod the PC version. It has apparently some really funny animation bugs if you try, where they end up like wave dashing or like moonwalking because they don't know like what to do with all the extra information.
I will give them credit. Like I didn't know it was like it was possible for me to like get like more disappointed like Symphonia like re-releases, and then they revealed this version and detailed it. It's like, well, I'm somehow even more disappointed at a future re-release of Symphonia again. Like Jesus Christ, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah, Symphonia is a good game, but when we learned that they were going to remaster another Tales project, like all the other games they could have picked, we back in like August when we were thinking, oh, maybe let's do a Zilla double pack. Nope. It
is a good game, marred by like every re-release attempt for this game has been not as good as the original release of the game.
Yeah, it's a good game where you have like footnote caveats.
That's so crazy. I can't.
And the
think
opportunity
of, like,
cost
release.
of what we could have had instead. All right, for a few more release dates, Void Terrarium 2 will also be releasing in English in February. It will launch on February 28th for Switch and PS4.
I'm interested in this, but like not at that date. So
because that's around the same
gonna
time
be like
as
shortly
Octopath
after
Traveler 2.
Fire Emblem Engage, was it?
Well, Fire Emblem's January,
January.
but still, like Octopath is right around then, and I think Wo Long is like the week after, and
January,
Wild
February
Hearts is
gonna be
around
heavily
there.
packed.
It's already bad, Chow. Okay, I mean it's not like there's new news. It's bad right now. It's gonna be bad in December. It's gonna be continues to be bad until like maybe April next year.
I can't believe I'm ditching Fire Emblem for Athia Rise of Free.
Dang. Well.
No, I can't be sold on Two-Face yet.
Wow. I mean, I'll say this: all the little snippets of gameplay they showed for Fire Emblem Engage so far, at least like the map design seems to look a little bit better than Three Houses.
Mm-hmm. So these are a couple release windows that are a little bit further out. WrestleQuest, which is a game that we've talked about previously and what on this podcast, and also showed up at the Nintendo Indie World Showcase, will be releasing next May. And the Indie World Showcase also had a new trailer for that, of course. Another thing that showed up in the Indie World Showcase was the monochromatic RPG World of Horror. It will also be releasing in summer of 2023. It showed up at the Nintendo Showcase, but it's also going to be launching on PlayStation 4 and 5 and PC as well.
There's actually one I really want to check out, but I'm just waiting for like a full 1.0 release because I know it's been in early access for like a mini eternity now.
So yeah, it'll be leaving early access in the summer of next year alongside launching on the PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. And then the last bit of news here, this is a little bit of a footnote, but just another game that has been constantly being updated over the last couple of months since its release. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. James has been jumping in and basically keeping us up to date as they go through the title updates for that expansion for Monster Hunter Rise. There will be a digital event this week detailing Update 3. So don't really know exactly what it'll showcase, but they're having a streaming event next Wednesday or so for that. That's another game that kind of released this year that like I played Sunbreak, never got back to it after all the post-game DLC, but it sounds like I'll have plenty to dive into once I find the time to do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat too. Like I beat it like the base launch of it, and then I just never went back to the title updates. At this point, maybe never will.
Yeah,
But who
kind of.
knows?
Yes. So at some point, you got to admit defeat and be like, all right, something's got to come off the plate. Still, I really enjoyed my time with Sunbreak. Just other stuff released. Which basically all boils down to. And that covers us for news this week. So really kind of a jam-packed week. We got the two big releases with Harvestella and Tactics Ogre Reborn. We've got more upcoming in November with primarily Pokemon and people trying to catch up on everything else that's released in late October and this month. So it's a hectic time of year, and we're all trying to find the time to get to everything and make sure we give every game a look in before we have to start ranking these things in December. We have all the news articles up on the site that we've talked about on this podcast, including some of the more detailed ones talking about the Falcom plans for releases next year and the Square Enix financials, as well as the Nintendo sales update as well, all up on the site. The Star Ocean Divine Force review that Scott wrote up is up on the site as well. So go ahead and give that a read if you're working your way through that game and want to just see another opinion on that. It seems like we're all thinking pretty positively on that game as kind of a surprise of the year. You can find us on Discord at discord.gg/RPG site. We've had kind of an influx of users lately with the just the tumultuous social media landscape of recent times. So go ahead and go in our Discord if you want to find just like-minded RPG fans to chat with and talk about all the recent releases. And you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search for RPG site and you should be able to find us. So next week, we'll likely be talking about a few other new November RPGs as they come out. Maybe Pokemon. Depends on whether we get access or if James decides to play it early from his secret store over there in Southern California. Yeah, there's a lot coming out. That's a long story short. So we probably won't know the itinerary for next week's podcast until we get there. So look forward to hearing from us then. Until next time, stay safe and take care. And we'll talk to you later.
We want no part in any shared peace. I piss on your common cause.
That's the Tactic Ogre line.
Yeah.
Good line.